Good morning. This is May 1st. We're shortly after 9:30. We're here today to have a Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee work session. We have a number of items before us today. We're starting with the Parks budget, Park and Planning budget. Before we get into the packet today, I think it's important to address an elephant in the room. While I have many lingering questions about the decision last week regarding Little Falls Parkway and the future funding commitments that it will require, we're here today for a different purpose, to go through the agency's operating budget, so I'll be following up separately to address those project-specific concerns. Yet it does beg some important overarching questions about the roles and responsibilities of the Council and our Budget Oversight Authority with respect to park and planning. Today, we're going to go through the operating budget in detail, even discussing the possibility of spending $41,000 for internships. And yet, there are suggestions that the department has the authority to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on new projects without any discussions on specific requests before the County Council. Understandably, residents are confused and concerned about what does that mean for the role that the Council plays vis-a-vis the Planning Board and the Parks and the Planning Departments. I've consistently spoken about the important role our parks play in quality of life, mental and physical health, and regional competitiveness, and I think most know I have steadfastly advocated to reverse millions of dollars of cuts over the last several years. But I do believe we owe it to our residents to be crystal clear about how these decisions are made and what budget authority rests in the department, at the Planning Board, and with the County Council. There will be more time to have that higher level conversation about roles and responsibilities and lingering project specific questions. But with that said, I don't believe we're here to talk about those issues here specifically today. So I am going to turn it over to staff to take us through the packet with Ms. Michelson, unless colleagues have any particular overarching comments. And with that, we'll turn it over to you, Ms. Michelson.
Thank you. As committee members know, Ms. Nadeau and I are taking over for Pam Dunn, who could not be here today. Anything you like in this memo, you can thank her for. Anything you dislike, any mistakes, we will take credit for, or I'll take credit for. You don't have to, because we had to, finish up some of her work on it. And I really want to thank Ms. Nadeau for jumping in and helping to pull this all together, and as well to our colleagues in the Commission, in the Parks and Planning Department, and CIS for all their help as we pull this all together. So I like to start a budget with the big picture and the highlights. And the big picture this year is the Commission asked for $15 million of tax-supported funds, and the executive's recommendation is for $6.9 million of that amount. And the big problem is that approximately 8.7 of their request is compensation. Both the compensation, annualization of compensation from FY23 and their marker for FY24. So if consistent with what you did for the county government and what you're trying to do elsewhere, your goal is to fund compensation. That will be the, one of the primary concerns we'll be looking at. There are also, so the budget increases fall into three main categories. Compensation, known major commitments, things like contracts and rent, and then new initiatives. And within the known major commitments, you'll see as we get into this memo more that Ms. Nadeau and I tried to categorize those into those that we thought were absolutely essential, and those that are somewhat discretionary, including increased costs, inflationary increased costs for supplies, where a decision can be made, for example, to reduce the amount of supplies you're purchasing or to look to alternatives. So that's, that are the details we'll get through as we go through the departments. I do want to note that the Council President's approach has been to place anything that is over the FY23 budget on the reconciliation list, and we will be doing that. In this case, we have a very unique situation in that it's not only over FY23, but it's also in addition to the executive recommended budget in most cases. So we'll take you through some of the details on that. Just starting with some of the overarching background. You have within the commission two major funds. The administrative fund, the park fund are the two tax supported funds, and the administration fund is close to 21% of the total costs, about 17% of the FTEs. Lots of the FTEs, most of them are in the parks department, where you have a lot of staff doing maintenance. We also have some non-tax supported funds, and we'll be getting into that as well. And with the non-tax supported funds, we don't need to worry about the same reductions in reconciliation lists because they are generally covered by fees. I do want to say it up front, and I'll remind you later, that when we get to CAS, you will be meeting with the Prince George's County Council on May 11th before you ever look at a reconciliation list. So to prepare for that meeting, the council will need to make a determination as to what to fund. And then we will negotiate with Prince George's County to see what their intent is. If the two counties disagree, or the two councils disagree, then the budget gets submitted it stands as submitted. Let's see if I can get those words out. So, we're given the concerns with this budget, there'll be a great incentive for us to come to agreement with our colleagues in Prince George's County. So I've already told you a little bit about the total increases and the overview that is discussed on page 3 of the memo, the increases of $15 million. I do want to note that although the tax supported request shown on the first page is I believe a total of 189 million as the CE requested, the total appropriation would be 210 million, and that includes all of the non-tax supported funds and debt service. And moving on to page 4 of the memo, you'll see the breakdown among the different funds. The administration fund, which includes Commissioner's Office, the Planning Department, and Central Administrative Services. The Park Fund, grants, the self-supporting funds, Advanced Land Acquisition Fund, the Internal Service Funds, and Special Revenue Funds. And we'll go through each of those categories as we get through the memo. I'll only briefly address spending affordability, which seems to play less of a role with each passing year, and some of the council's key decision points, at least as it relates to the commission. In the commission, the spending affordability guidelines are 11 million below what the council approved as the FY 24 spending affordability guidelines. The council approval was for 154 million, and the commission request is for 165 million. And again, we'll go through the more detailed requests as we get through it. Major changes in the budget are on page 5. I already gave you some of the highlights of that. 8.7 million in compensation, 3.1 million in non-personnel cost changes, including things like debt payments and major known commitments and operating budget impact of parks. And then finally 3.2 million in what are new initiatives. So moving on to the Parks Department budget, you'll see that on page 7, the approved FY23 Parks Department budget, the amount that the budget request was, and the executive. And the Parks Department asked for a total of 9.2 million in increase, and the difference between the executive, what they've requested, and the executive recommendation is $4.3 million. Compensation adjustments are the bulk of the increases, 57% of them. And then you'll see the other categories here, the known operating commitments, the OBI for new parks, the NPDES, the new funding for program enhancements, debt service, and OPEB. I do want to note that I think the intent has always been to include compensation in the budget, but we will, for tracking purposes, have to show it as an item on the reconciliation list because it's not in the budget now. Staff would recommend that that be shown as a high priority, consistent with what you're doing elsewhere. On the known operating commitments, which is 19.6% of the requested increase, and I guess I'm going to pause for a moment and just ask the committee as we go through council staff recommendations to let me know if you have a question or if you want to endorse it. So I should have on compensation, the council staff recommendation was to make that a high priority. Do you want to do these one by one or come back to them? Let me know.
Yeah, so why don't you go through the full packet, and then why don't we take up the issues one by one, and we'll have the Parks Department weigh in on each of them,
Right.
and then
Okay.
the committee can share their thoughts, we can ask questions, and we can make a decision one by one, but I think it'd be helpful to
Hear the
go
whole
through
thing
everything first.
Sure,
Thank
my
you.
pleasure. Okay, so on the known operating commitments, what we have recommended, we've kind of divided these up into those we think are high priorities versus just priorities, and we've tried to do this consistent with how the council's been handling this for the county government. So increases in contractual obligations, software maintenance, utility and communications as high priorities, and those inflationary increases which are not required by contract would be priority, similar to how they've been handled elsewhere. On the operating budget impacts of parks, there's a request for an increase associated with new parks, and in this case, council staff is recommending that it be a priority, not a high priority, because there is discretion, including in prior years when we've had difficult fiscal times. The Parks Department has decided to delay the opening of a new park, or where necessary to shift resources. It does mean that you don't have the same level of services if they open the park, but a necessary adjustment. For the NPDES mandate, this is funded by the Water Quality Protection Fund, and therefore we don't think it needs to be shown either as a reduction or on the reconciliation list, since it's not a tax, or it's a separate fund that is not part of the general fund obligations here. And debt service on general obligation bonds, obviously we feel that this is critical and should be included in the budget, but once again would be shown as a high priority just based on how we are handling all of these adjustments. For the program enhancements, and there are many here, and we'll give when we give the opportunity to the Parks Department to go through them, I'm sure that we'll give them an opportunity to talk about why they thought these were all critical additions to help the system. But in a year in which things are so difficult, we are recommending taking all of these enhancements as reductions and then having 2 tranches of $200,000 each to be placed on the priority list without indicating which particular positions they would be. Should the council fund it, we would allow the Parks Department to make the determination of what they think are the most critical positions to fill. I do note that because of our concerns about what the fiscal condition will be next year, It's probably best not to ramp up too much on staffing if it at all can be avoided, so that we're not in a position next year of having to potentially eliminate some newly hired staff. So there are some changes in staffing that are shifts for the maintenance of Montgomery County public schools here, where it is a shift from a contractor to in-house staffing and an offsetting costs. We are recommending that they be kept in the budget. Shifts are exempt from the requirement to be reduced and placed on the reconciliation list. But for those positions that are new, once again, we recommend those be placed on the reconciliation list as a priority. The department was able, as it was trying to help look for potential reductions, was able to offer perhaps a non-recommended cut of increasing their laps for parks positions. And as the committee may have heard throughout the years, park laps tends to be higher than our average employee. There's a lot of turnover in things like maintenance positions. And so they believe that they can increase their salary laps from 9%, I believe is the amount that was originally in the budget, to 10%. And they noticed that the highest, they've had, and if you look at the first paragraph on laps, they have had some periods of time which they've had very high laps. The highest was over 19% just in this July. And the lowest was 9.7% in January 2019. So this increase to the 10% actually appears to reflect reality. It's not a forced lapse for them. And there are no fee increases that are asked for in this year's budget. So we now have a table that summarizes the council staff requests, so we can go back to those. And the one that you do not see in this table would be the making sure that compensation and debt service are both added as high priorities to the reconciliation list. And I can stop here, see if there are committee questions, or if you want to give the department the opportunity to go back through this list.
Obviously compensation is very important, and we want to make sure that everybody who's working hard every day is able to get the commitments that they have. I just want to confirm, I think it's important, just in case anybody's watching an individual committee session, I think most people are not watching every single one, that putting it on the reconciliation list as a high priority would be consistent with how we've handled compensation for all the other outside agencies.
Yes, it is. For county government is in the budget. So it's slightly different for county government, but yes, for outside agencies, that's correct.
Okay, so no objection to putting that on as a highest of high priorities, I would say. But I think that's how it was referred to in a prior committee I was in, so we'll acknowledge that. Okay, any other questions?
And just the other one that's not on this chart is the debt service.
Yeah, debt service. We've already encumbered these costs. Unlike some who suggest not too far from here that we shouldn't pay the bills that we've already incurred in Montgomery County, we don't take that position. We pay our bills, so non-discretionary. So okay. I think
and then we have on the chart on pages 11 and 12 summarizes all of the other staff recommendations, which will give you an opportunity to vote on those one by one.
Yeah, my suggestion is we go through the staff recommendations one by one, but at each one you can, you can quickly introduce it, describe it, and then we can turn over to Parks to discuss their views on it, and then committee members can weigh in as appropriate.
Right. So the first two compensation adjustments are reductions that were identified by the department. the increase in salary lap to 10%, which I mentioned, and the reclassification marker, which I forgot to mention, and I'll allow Mike to explain that one, or whoever he wants.
Oh, sure. Mike Riley, Director of Parks. So the lapse at 10%, of course, we propose, so we agree with that as a reasonable expectation of our average vacancy rate over FY24. The reclassification marker is money that was in the budget to on the expectation that we're going through this major review of all of our class specs in the commission. And generally, when people get allocated into the revised and upgraded class spec, not always, but in generally, they get a bump in pay. So that was an expectation for those pay increases, but because the study is not moving at the schedule we had anticipated, that's money we can forego.
Great. Okay, so those are reductions that would be taken without adding them back. The next category is contractual obligations, and these are the obligations that they're contractually bound to, which is why staff recommended them as a high priority, 710,000, and I'll group these with also the software maintenance agreements and debt service in the capital equipment internal service fund, which we've recommended as a high priority. And I'll stop there and see if Mr. Riley wants to add anything.
Again, just as a general comment with these, what you're describing as high priority, if we don't get these increases, we have a reduction in service. And that is also true of your next category, which is well, utilities for sure. Are we going to turn off the light for a couple hours to make up the difference? I don't think so. It'll have to come up otherwise. So all of these types of inflationary increases are necessary unless you are telling us to reduce services. And that will particularly be true with the OBI for parks. We're committed, the council committed us to expand the park system. We're obligated to maintain those. If we don't, it will be very different. I would have hoped that all of the things on major cost changes would would be included in our budget easily, as a necessary increase to keeping the doors open. In total, it would be $3 million to our budgets for all departments. But as we're going through them individually, my recommendation, if you don't have a priority higher than high priority, put them on high priority.
Appreciate that. So I'm going to suggest that we take up the staff recommendations that are currently at high priority and see if there are any, is there agreement or objection there? So that would be the 710,100 for contractual obligations, the 414,283 for software maintenance agreements, and the 475,812 for utility and telecommunications increase. And those we put on the reconciliation as high priority, so concur with the staff recommendation. Then there are 3 additional in this area for inflationary adjustments, OBI, and program enhancements. Staff is recommending for the first 2 priority, and for the program enhancements 2 tranches of 200,000 as priority. And we'll turn to colleagues if there are any comments on that. Yeah.
I do. I just, this is, I know I want to first thank Lavu and Marlene and Pam for a great packet in an unusual year. This is very different for all of us, the way the budget's been approached. I do want to just start out with some good news. We found out last week we were again a finalist for the Gold Medal Award from the National Park and Recreation Association for the best large park system in the United States. This is for populations over 400,000. So we compete with major cities across the country. Recent winners included Dallas and Chicago, so that's who we compete with. And we're a finalist. We don't know whether we win. There are 3 others. And another thing, I was paging through my new Bethesda magazine last night that just came hot off the press. It has an article called 24 Things to Do as the Days Get Longer and the Nights Get Hotter. 10 of them are in our parks. 10 of the 24 recommendations are in our parks. So I just want to really thank you for supporting the Parks Department in past budgets through reconciliation. If this committee had not done that in past years, I don't think that any of those things would happen. I specifically want to speak to OBI. OBI is something we've pretty much held sacred over the years. This is the resources to support newly built parks or newly acquired parkland. It pays for staff, it pays for utility bills. And I want to give you 2 examples this year about OBI. We're going to open up the Black Hill Seed Classroom in Black Hill Regional Park with a community garden. I mean, if I'm not getting OBI, I have to start considering not opening facilities we've built. On the other side of the county at Hillendale, we're going to finish a major upgrade there with a Bermuda grass field that's irrigated. And I have to pay WSFC the water bill. And as much as we've wanted to get better natural grass fields, Bermuda grass honestly is more labor intensive. So those are the policy realities we have to face if we don't get OBIs in budget, as we would have to have policy discussions about building new parks or acquiring new parkland. So that's one request I would ask you change to either in the budget or high priority. And then the other is on the program enhancements, one minor issue. One of them is for a construction inspector, and I'd like to charge that position 100% to the CIP. As you know, I've been very successful with state grants this year. We just announced over $5 million with state capital grants for 13 projects, so I do have more than adequate CIP money. It was just a $13,000 item on the program enhancements, and I ask that you zero that out through full chargebacks and include it in the budget like the other zero cost items. And then the last thing I would just ask the committee as we get to program enhancements again, the way I've been able to move the Parks Department forward in the 9 years I've been director is only because of reconciliation. We would not have the athletic field program we have, we would not have the expanded trail network, and we would not have the park activation program if the council had not supported the parks during reconciliation. If I lived with the county executive's budget all those years, none of those programs would exist. So I do ask you to consider putting all of the program enhancements in one form or another on the reconciliation list. Perhaps an option would be 2 tranches of $400,000 instead of 2 tranches of $200,000, but I would like at least a chance to have them compete, and some of them are scalable. I could actually, if working within these tranches, reduce the cost. For example, the natural resource crew and the park activation has multiple positions, so they are scalable, and I'll stop there and respectfully ask for your consideration.
Appreciate it. Turn to Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez.
So one of the reasons why Montgomery County is so great is because of our quality of life. And the Parks Department has is so vital to be able to have that quality of life. And I think whatever happens with our parks, it directly hits our economic development potential in the entire region. And I think it's a huge mistake not to put it as a high priority everything that Mr. Riley has addressed. Operating budget impacts, that's key. Making sure that we have a strong program enhancements program is vital. Making sure that we have our parks fields be as part of the best ones in the entire nation. Having that gold standard that he mentioned, that recognition, that is a nationwide recognition, is a big deal, and we should be able to continue that standard and even higher. So I fully support the statements from the Parks Director, and I think, again, it's a huge mistake not to prioritize, putting in a high priority each one of them. So I don't agree with the staff recommendation, and I ask my colleagues just to also embrace this, because it's just simply the right thing to do. We're gonna have a property tax increase. I don't know if it's gonna be 10 cents, but it's gonna be higher. And if people don't see that they have parks that actually meet their standards and that they can actually enjoy the outdoors as they're supposed to, we're gonna have a huge problem. And again, as he mentioned, the county executive has never been really, let's just say, friendly with the Park and Planning Commission. I said it. And it's our job to ensure that they have what they need to be successful and to be welcoming and to have things that our community can feel proud of. This is also another way to attract more people to move to Montgomery County. We must increase the tax base in Montgomery County, and having parks that actually meet our high standards is critical. So that's what I'm gonna say. I hope you can support this.
Okay, so is this a formal recommendation, or okay, so your recommendation, high priority for all of them in tranches, or just?
As Mr. Riley described, I think especially the last one, that you're willing to be more flexible, I'm agreeing with that.
I think it's highest priority for OBI and
High priority, yes.
highest.
You don't
Well, there's only priority and high priority.
You don't have that?
We don't have it.
Yeah.
I'm so confused. I'm sorry. I'm from New Jersey. We always have at least 3.
We'll forgive.
I said casually highest of high priorities previously when referring to compensation, but there is no actual category for highest priority. It's just high priority and priority. So, all right. So why don't I turn to Councilmember Jawando? So you are proposing to take up Director Riley's request to put as high priority. I can summarize that, I think, but you can go first if you'd like, make some comments, and then we can see where we are.
Yeah, I mean, I did want to understand. As I understood it, the suggestion was to take the two $400,000 tranches. Your suggestion, though, was that if that was a priority, and not, obviously you'd love to have it high priority. So I think that's not what you suggested. As I read your email and as I heard what you said, if it had to be a priority, the program enhancements, that it would be put in two $400,000 tranches because you could cut costs. That's what I heard and read. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, obviously
you always want to take more, but that's not what you said.
But
Yeah.
what I was asking for is two $400,000 tranches, both being given high priority.
Okay.
So instead of 200, 400,000 instead of
Right. Right now they're
priority.
Right now the whole thing is priority. Right. But you but you're I'm not comfortable with doing both things. So I think we're going to have to make tough budgets. I'm chair of the Education and Culture Committee. The entire school budget's going to have to go on the reconciliation list. So yes, people come for our parks, but they absolutely come for our schools. So and we're going to have to make very, very difficult decisions this budget. So I just can't in good conscience add all of this as high priority. We're going to make a recommendation in the E&C committee on Thursday about how much of the budget to fund of the school system. And I agree. The good thing is I think we went 1 through 5 here. Everyone agreed, high priority. We got to pay our folks. The utility stuff, we don't want lights being turned on. All that, we agree with all of that. On the program enhancements and the hiring of staff, it's important, and that's why I think we should put it on the list. And I would be supportive of putting it on the list, as you wrote last night, as two $400,000 tranches, but I can't support putting all of that on as high priority. I just don't think that that's going to work with the process that we've laid out, and just seeing what other committees have done and how many things are going to be on that list. So I'm willing to, then I'll turn to the chair. Maybe we can figure something out, but I understand how important it is. I understand that you had to fight for this every year. As you know, Mike, I've supported all those initiatives that you've mentioned, the ball fields and everything, and so has Councilman Friedson. So we want to work with you, but I just think this is a really tough year. So.
Appreciate that. So I'm going to offer up a suggestion and see if where colleagues are on it. I think there's council staff was recommending 400,000 be put on as priority. The director is requesting 800,000 to be put on as a high priority. Perhaps if we put on 300,000 as a high priority and then two $250,000 tranches as a priority, it would be the full $800,000 request, but just the first 300,000 of it would be high priority, and then the remainder of the $800,000 request would be priority. So I'm seeing where colleagues are on that. I think it is. The idea is to be at a sweet spot between where council staff was. It's double the council staff recommendation, and it's 1.5 times on high priority. So it's a significant change from that, but it does acknowledge and recognize what Councilmember Joanda was saying, which I think is important, that it's going to be very difficult for us to fund everything that's on the reconciliation list in light of property tax increases, competing priorities. We need to make sure the compensation and other, critical areas happen. We have to pay our bills, et cetera.
Just a reminder that out of all the agencies that we have in Montgomery County, this one is the one that gets the least, pretty much, if you compare with everybody else. So that's why I'm such a strong support of giving them what they need, because they're not getting nearly enough compared to everybody else. So I just want to put that on the record. I will, obviously I'm the minority here. So if you want to follow, do what you just said, then let's go for it. But I think it's a mistake, personally. But I'll go for it.
Okay.
And can you just go back to on the inflationary adjustments and the OBI? Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez asked that those be shifted to high priority, but I didn't hear from the other committee members whether you agree with
let's
that.
take up the first one, and then I think
Got it. Okay.
come back to that if that is okay, because there's.
Yep.
Okay, so you'd rather do what you proposed, two $400,000 tranches on high priority, but you're willing. So do you want it to be reflected as a 3-0 recommendation for 350 high priority and 300 high priority and two $250,000 tranches as priority for the program enhancements? Are you
So
comfortable?
300 high priority.
And two 250,000 as priority. And do you want? I'm putting this up as a compromise.
Yeah, and I'm agreeing with the compromise. So yes.
But if both colleagues say that I'll go with it, but it's terrible, then it's going to be hard to get the full council on board. So if there is another approach here, I'm open to it. I'm just trying to bring everybody together here so we can advocate. I think it would send a stronger message to the full council if we have a unanimous recommendation that acknowledges how critical the parks services are to our residents that have been relied on more than they've ever been before, while also acknowledging that we've got really tough decisions ahead of us and something's got to give.
Can we? So to Ms. Michelson's point, though, the interplay of what we do with the OBI. I mean, the inflationary adjustments, I'm fine just personally having those as high priority. Because that's something that is happening, and it's, but, here's the question. If we're going to do all three, I think that it would change my view on this compromise.
Okay, so why don't we put a pin then? That's fair, reasonable. I'm just trying to take these one decision at a time. Why don't we put a pin in this? There was a proposal. I have a compromise proposal that's before us. We can come back to that. Councilmember Joanda seems comfortable, as certainly Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez, with making the inflationary adjustments at $327,674 as high priority. I'm comfortable with that as well. We have to cover the cost of inflation to the department. I don't think that the budget appropriately addressed that, as Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez was noting. So I think we're all comfortable with that. So we will 3-0 committee recommendation for the $327,674 for inflationary adjustments on as a high priority to the reconciliation list. Okay, the OBI is $461,407, and the request is to have that as a high priority rather than a priority. and Councilmember Fonda Gonzalez would like that as a priority as well. Councilmember Jawando.
Yeah, can you explain to me, between just talk about this again in the light of, just explain to me the impact here again. Parks, please.
Sure. Every year, we look at the schedule for all the capital projects as we approach the operating budget year, and we answer the question, when will this park come online? What level of staffing does it need? Using Hillendale as an example, we know we need to mow the Bermuda grass field more frequently than we would mow the old field. Using the Black Hill Seed Classroom, I would say typically we'd have a utility bill, but that happens to be a net zero building, but it needs to be staffed. Now the interesting thing about that is that's something we could actually complete and not ever open if we don't have program staff to manage it. So those are the bigger ones, but then incrementally we look at every other little project where we have done something new or acquired some land.
Sure. Okay.
And we put a dollar amount next to it, but it's policing, utilities, staffing, maintenance. Those are the major components.
So which is more important to you, that or the program enhancements?
Well, I have to say the OBI is.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I figured. So just to preview where I am, if that's where you are, I'm happy to do that as high priority, but I'm not going to be okay with the compromise. Just because I think that's too much. We made everything high priority on the entire list, and put the full amounts that were requested on the list, except for obviously I know you proposed 350 as high priority and then the smaller amounts. So I would be fine with that as high priority then, but I'm not going to be fine with the next thing.
Okay, and then is the will of the committee to put that on as high priority in one tranche, the full 461, 407?
Yes.
I'd be willing to break it up but I don't have.
I'm just asking.
I don't have a sense of the program impact. Of that.
I'll just to give you an update that the full council will be receiving later on today. As of the end of last week, we have $65 million on the high priority list. So the council's going to have to make a lot of choices
Even on
ahead.
that
So.
list, yeah.
This agency does not get as much as everybody else. I'm just going to remind you of that.
No, I understand. I think the concern is the way the reconciliation list works. I just want to make everybody understand this. Tranching it sometimes allows you to get something if you can't get everything. And the concern that I would have, given the $65 million in commitments or requests on the high priority reconciliation list, is that these are pretty big numbers. A lot of those reconciliation lists are lower numbers, and they could be left off entirely. And the question is that a risk that is acceptable? And there's different strategies of how to deal with these issues. Sometimes you make it a big number and you go all in on the big number because you want to get all of it. But it's a risk. So I'll yield back to Kyla. We can figure if the goal is to put it at all of it together at 461 as a high priority. It sounds like Councilmember Juwan, I understand, would like to have an adjustment to the program enhancement change.
Yeah. And I'm basing that on what Parks is saying to me. That's an important yes.
Director Riley.
I would really like to get the full OBI, and what I would ask is that's on the list as a high priority, and then the one above it, the inflationary adjustments, that you asked me to live without that and put that on the priority list. Because the reason I say that
Good.
is the OBI includes the people I need to maintain those parks, and if I don't get it, I really have to have policy discussions with the board about, do I open the Black Hill Seed Classroom?
Okay, so we're going to amend at the request of the director. It sounds like the will of the committee is to change inflationary adjustments at 327, 674 to a priority as opposed to a high priority. And then we'll put on the OBI as one tranche at $461,407, acknowledging that there is a chance these are on the request list, not on the funded list, and there are no guarantees until the budget is completed, and there are tough decisions ahead. So we have a 3-0 vote on both of those.
I would actually say,
items.
and so you know that I'm a team player here, based on what you just said, what the planning director said, the parks director said, I will actually eliminate the inflammatory adjustments. Just cut it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to eliminate the inflationary adjustments, make no recommendation on that. Basically, the department is going to absorb that reduction. The OBI of 461,407, we will take and put that on the high priority list as one tranche, and so we have two committee recommendations there, and then we'd like the reduction to be reflected in the packet to show that, and then we still have the program enhancements question that we put a pin on earlier. My original recommendation that we should now discuss in light of these decisions, $300,000 as high priority, and then two $250,000 tranches as priority.
I'm fine with that since we dropped the other.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Still no promises on any of it, obviously. 'Cause
Right,
There's still
right.
$65.5 million now on the high priorities. So.
Right. It's going to be difficult to fund everything, even on the high priority list, much less the priority list. We have tough decisions ahead, but so we'll have a 3-0 committee recommendation, $300,000 high priority and program enhancements, and then $250,000 on priority.
And the other adjustment will be the one Mr. Riley suggested of moving the one position to be funded
Completely
by
in
the CIP.
the CIP.
Right.
Okay. So that will be reflected
Yes.
as a committee recommendation as well, at the request of or suggestion of the department.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, we're moving now on to the non-tax supported funds. So you won't see the same list of issues on reductions or reconciliation list. The first is the Property Management Fund, and this is the fund for park properties that are rented out. Sometimes they're house rentals or other buildings. Where revenues are expected to cover the costs of operating the property management fund. And for FY24, there's a minor adjustment of close to $20,000 and no change in work years. The Advanced Land Acquisition Revolving Fund is one of those strange funds which is actually funded in the CIP but also shows up in the operating budget, just to reflect that it is a revolving fund and repayments are made to the operating budget. And usually the amount of funding overall for the fund is dealt with as part of the CIP. So the Enterprise Fund are the self-supporting park activities summarized in a chart on page 14. First, we have the golf courses, which are not actually listed here because they're operated by the Revenue Authority, but there is some revenue that comes from the golf courses. Anytime they exceed their least stated threshold of the revenues of $5.1 million, it's expected that the Revenue Authority will be paying around $400,000 rent in FY23, and we'll see what it ends up happening in FY24. And then you have the summary of the estimated revenue in excess of expenses for ice rinks, indoor tennis event centers, and park facilities. And you can see every year they all go up and down a little bit. And event centers have never fully covered their costs, but the county has always felt that they do provide a worthwhile asset for park residents and continue to provide that small subsidy for them through the fund based on the other activities that generate more revenues than costs. So on net, all of these enterprise funds are still expected to generate $1.5 million in excess of the costs. And I'll stop there to see if you have any questions about any of these non-tax supported funds.
Yeah, thank you for that overview. Any comments from the department or from the planning board?
I just want to thank you and really commend our enterprise division in chief for navigating that fund through the pandemic and having it come out healthy. It took a lot of hard work to protect the patrons, cut expenses, and deal with lost revenue, and I'm very proud of Christy Turnbull, our enterprise chief, for successfully navigating that gauntlet.
And in FY24, I'm looking forward to enhancing the golf revenues.
He means that personally. We appreciate that. Okay, I think without objection, we will accept council staff recommendations on that and refer that to the full council. I think that is the balance of the parks.
We're done with the park fund, and now we'll move on to the administration fund.
Great.
Good morning. So for the administration fund, that of course includes the bi-county central administrative services, the commissioner's office, and the planning department. Here the executive recommends about $39 million, which is 2.5 below the commission's request. And then of course, due to the council president's guidelines, the way we're looking at this is above fiscal year 23, so another $2.5 million there. First up is the commissioner's office. So this includes the chair's office, and it has 9 career positions. There's a $220,000 increase from the fiscal year 23 budget. This is also divided into categories. So there's personnel services, which is an increase of about $188,000. Supplies and materials, which is an increase of a little above $1,000 for general inflation costs. And then an increase of $11,000 for other services and charges. Then $263,217 in chargebacks, which is an increase of $19,497. So if you go to page 16, similar to the park section, council staff has provided a chart with our recommendations. So here, council staff is recommending that the $47,286 increase in benefits, retirement, and annualization from last year. Those are salary adjustments, so as noted, will be recommends treating it the same as council has been, including compensation in the budget / on the high priority reconciliation list. Council staff recommends that the chargebacks be placed on the reconciliation list as a high priority, with the remaining increases in this category being placed as priorities. I do want to make one note here, I think at the bottom for the chargebacks, just noting that that does include that annualization and compensation. So again, I don't know if the committee wants to go one by one and hear from planning, but those are the council staff recommendations.
Okay, we have council staff recommendations. Any comments from the department?
Just
planning board
one
chair?
thing I'll say, that the chargebacks are in the base part of our budget. It's how we pay for the attorneys supporting the commission. I understand in the parlance that high priority is as good as I can get, and I'm content with the others being on the priority list.
Okay, the department is comfortable with it. Colleagues are comfortable. Okay, we will.
This is on the benefits. Which one are you talking
Yeah, this is. We're going through the administration fund. We have the committee recommendations here.
No, I'm there. I just mean, are we talking about the whole thing? We're taking the whole staff
The
recommendation?
charge.
Or just
Sorry,
as is?
Page 16, top chart, you're okay.
Chargeback. Yeah.
Yeah, chargebacks in the benefits would be a high priority, as I'm reading it, and everything else would be priority. Right.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm fine
Yes.
with that.
Okay. Comfortable with the committee staff recommendation on that? Okay.
So next is the planning department. This is organized similarly, so I'll go through each of the recommendations and then we'll get to the chart at the end of this section. So on page 17, you'll see the proposed budget that summarizes all of the increases proposed for fiscal year 24. If you move to page 18, there's a discussion of the work years here. So there's an increase of 4 new positions, and then funding for a currently unfunded position. Next is the work program. So this is where the majority of the staff analysis is here. So there is a master plan schedule. There are 4 new work programs proposed with their completion dates. So there's the Germantown Employment Corridor Check-in, which is to be completed in June 2024. The Thrive 2050 implementation metrics proposed to be completed in July 2024. Curbside management project in October 24, and then the Randolph Road Corridor study in May 2025. As the council's probably aware, we're going to have a pretty busy fiscal year 24 in front of council. So the board is not proposing any new master plans in the upcoming 2 years, because as you'll see, there's a lot of ongoing major studies and other initiatives and work program items. The current ones that are happening are at the bottom of page 18. So these are all the ones that are scheduled to be delivered through fiscal year 25. And then if you go to the chart on page 19, you'll see all the initiatives and studies that are proposed to be delivered to council, again, through fiscal year 25. So what I'll do next is go through each of the new initiatives that have been added since we're comparing to fiscal year 23. Those start at the bottom of page 19. So first is the Randolph Road Corridor Study. So what's recommended here is $75,000. This is a one-time expense, and this will identify some of the infrastructure, services, and other needs to support planning's goal of 15-minute living in Glenmont. So council staff recommends placing this study on the reconciliation list as a priority. The proposed date is May 2025. This was one of the later items on the work program list, which is part of why council staff is recommending it for that priority list. Next is the Germantown Employment Corridor Check-in. This is $50,000, again one time. So the sector plan for this area was adopted in 2009, and there's been some significant changes, including realignment of the CCT. Council staff is recommending, abbreviations, the Corridor Cities Transit Way. Council staff is recommending that this also be placed on the reconciliation list as a priority. You'll see this throughout, but council staff wanted to acknowledge and note that this could result in a delay of that June 2024 proposed completion date. Next is the Thrive Montgomery 2050 implementation metrics. That's $100,000 one time. So it's a pretty ambitious set of metrics in order to sort of monitor the implementation of Thrive 2050. Council staff recommended partially funding this item with $55,600 as high priority and $44,000 as priority. Did want to note here that Planning Department's recommendation is actually to fully fund this and place it on the high priority list. The recommendation that was in there before was due to some compensation discussions based on the CE budget, but comparing to fiscal year 23, Planning has let staff know that they want this fully funded. Next is the Curbside Management Project. This is $100,000 one time, and this cost is to be split with DOT. Do want to note here that this is not in DOT's fiscal year 24 budget, so council staff recommends this one be placed on the priority list. Next, moving to page 21, so these are the initiatives. The Great Seneca Plan, the Urban Design Guidelines, and Streetscape Standards. This is $25,000 one time. Council staff had recommended placing this on the list as a priority, but planning staff let us know recently that they are okay with a full reduction on this item. Next is the burial sites context study. This is $65,000 one time. Planning had put this as one of their non-recommended reductions, but council staff knows internally that this is an item that is of pretty high interest to the council, so it did recommend high priority for this item. Next is the Regional Travel Demand Model / Transportation Network Database Management Tools. So the COG is working on a regional travel demand model that is supposed to be released at the end of this year. So this would implement and let the planning department come up with an adaptation of this travel demand modeling tool for the county. Council staff does recommend placing this on the reconciliation list as a priority, which will delay this a bit, but given the budget constraints this year, thinks that that's fair. Next is the redlining / segregation mapping project. Is $100,000, another one-time expense, and this is to support phase 2 of this project. Phase 1 funding was at $100,000 and has been completed. This is one that council staff actually recommends placing on the reconciliation list as a high priority, given interest from council members that's been heard, and because it's already halfway through. I did want to quickly note, we will get to this at the end, but the burial sites context study and the redlining project are noted in the planning department's racial equity responses. And then next up is the Americans with Disabilities Act compliance. This is $40,000, an ongoing expense. Council staff recommends this on the high priority list, I guess we're calling it, because this meets legal requirements, so we do have to do this one. That's my council attorney recommendation. And then next you will see 4 positions that council staff recommends placing on the reconciliation list as priorities. As we noted, the council staff's general recommendation is not to add too many new positions as we look ahead at upcoming fiscal years. The 4 positions here are the adequate public facilities planner, the forest conservation planner, planner for down county planning, and then the transportation data management planner. Planning staff has noted that the visual media and imaging specialist is no longer needed because there's been some restructuring, so those duties have been filled. And that is all the council staff recommendations. I will jump to page 24 so we can go through them one by one.
Okay, so I think we should go through these one by one. I'll just note, I think there are a number of the items that, for various reasons, were seen as lesser priorities than others, and everything is being put either on the high priority list or the priority list. I think certain things we just shouldn't put on the reconciliation list at all. I think we need to just decide there are certain issues here that relate to the ongoing work of racial equity and social justice that I think is a broad-based priority. There are other areas that I think we're moving forward on that I think we should signal very strongly that these are very high priorities and we're going to fight for them in reconciliation, which is going to be very difficult and very competitive. But I think there are others I don't think we should just be adding as priorities to the reconciliation list as a throwaway. I think, if we don't think that they're crucial, then we shouldn't be putting them on at all. So I'll just signal that as we go through, and hopefully the department can provide us some guidance here of, what are existential needs and what are nice to haves that could wait another year or two. And we could use that in our, ultimate decision-making process as we go through these. So with that, do we want to go through one by one and turn to the department to give feedback on them? If you have any broad-based thoughts, please provide them now, and then we'll go through one by one these items, and you can give your views.
Sure, thank you. Tanya Stern, Acting Planning Director with the Planning Department. I do want to note, just with regards to new initiatives that would support equity, while there are 2 projects listed here, and I will give some further comments about that later, that have very clear ties to equity in terms of what the project topic is about. The key thing to keep in mind is that every planning initiative that the Planning Department does is intended to support equity. We have both a equity agenda and planning initiative that impacts every master plan that we do and every study that we do. So even with the other projects that may not seem necessarily related to equity, we always apply an equity lens for all of our projects. So I just want to clarify that if those 2 projects don't end up getting funded, that doesn't mean that we aren't doing work to support equity. So just to go through each project one by one, I think just first wanted to say definitely appreciate council staff work on this, and we have obviously had some initial conversations to clarify that there were at least a couple of items that were already that we were already willing to give up to provide some savings. But I will just go through each item and just to provide some comments where applicable. We definitely have heard the message that the high priorities list needs to be a very short list. And so I think with regards to a number of the studies and initiatives on this list, what I would like to provide is how the planning department has already done its own internal ranking in terms of how we're prioritizing them. So to start with that, Thrive Montgomery 2050, that's already partially on the high priority list and partially on the priority list. That's our #1 ranking. But following that is the Randolph Road Corridor Study is #2, the Curbside Management Project, which is #3. And one clarification I would like to note with regards to the Curbside Management Project, that would be an initiative that we would do jointly with MCDOT. But just to clarify, the intention was that we will be requesting funding in FY24 to do the project, and then MCDOT would request the funding in FY25. So there wasn't an intention that they would be requesting funding during this fiscal year as well.
Why don't we, so those
Yes.
are your top 3 priorities. Why don't we start with your top 3 priorities?
Sure. There's actually 4.
You have 4, okay, good.
Yes.
Finish with your 4th, and then,
So, and these again, just to clarify, these would be, essentially new planning projects. The top one is Thrive Montgomery 2050.
Those are high priorities for you.
Let me kind of give more clarification. For Thrive Montgomery 2050, we support, that is our high priority project as #1. The council staff recommended a little over $55,000 on high priority and the other $44,000 on priority. We're fine with that. There are 3 other projects, planning initiatives that are on our high priority list, but hearing the message that you want a shorter high priority list, I'm providing this ranking so that as you look at what's on the priority list, you understand how we're ranking it, and then that'll help inform your decisions, if that's clear. Okay. So following Thrive, the next for the priority list in terms of our rankings would be the Randolph Road Corridor Study, the Curbside Management Study, and then the Germantown Employment Corridor Check-in. With regards to the burial sites contact survey and the mapping segregation phase 2, those projects are actually at the bottom of our tier 2 list. Those are not high priorities for us. The historic preservation staff have a very heavy workload right now between historic preservation work permits, the volume that they've had to process has gone up, as well as other projects. So those 2 projects, we do not concur with putting those on the high priority list. And so we feel that you can take those off of the high priority list altogether.
okay. Well, I think we're going to get to that because I think there might
Okay.
be some differences of opinion with
Okay.
the council's priorities and the departments. I think we need to hear from committee members. But let me just ask a few questions.
Sure.
I do think it's important, and I appreciate this, that we look at what the department's highest priorities are, and we, deal with that. So I have two questions about the 4 that you mentioned. Then we're going to go through one by one.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's important for us to note that. So the first on Thrive.
Mm-hmm.
Question #1 is, what is the difference between the fund? What will 55,600 fund versus what will 44,400 fund in relation to that work?
We got that recommended split on Thursday, so we've not had enough time to go into a detailed analysis of what can be funded under both each tranche. But our intention was to use that funding, the original $100,000 request, to hire consultant assistants who would help us do a deep analysis on the metrics that are in Thrive, because some of them are not crystal clear in terms of how we can actually track what's intended. So we would need consultant assistants to help us work through those 80 metrics. We also intend to use the funding to purchase data if we need to as well. And so I think I don't have sort of a specific list of what can go under the 55,000 on a high priority list. I think what I would say is we would start with that funding to get the work underway, and we would do as much as we can.
There are
Got it.
80 metrics, we would do less metrics.
Okay, could I ask council staff, what was the rhyme or reason to the split? Instead of, say, 50,000 and 50,000,
So,
of 55,600
Dunn-
seems like a specific amount.
When Ms. Dunn asked the department how they would identify reductions to get down to the executive spending level, they had identified that they would present a non-recommended reduction to Thrive of 44,000. So that was not our idea. It originally came from the department.
Okay.
So.
All right, so we got a little bit of this going on, and I
Yeah.
just think we need to get that sorted out before we come into these meetings, and I don't think it's helpful when we're asking questions for it to be, well, we didn't know because we just got it, and for council staff to then say, well, the department requested it, so we don't need to get into a discussion about this, but for future reference, okay.
My mistake, I apologize.
No problem. On Thrive, something was brought to my attention, I just wanted to ask related to this. Is the council approved final clean version of Thrive up on planning's website and up on the council's website? Because this was raised as we were taking up this item, several community members said that it was not, and I just wanted to clarify that.
The approved version that was approved by the council in October should be available online. We are working with council staff to produce the final laid out version. So that is something that we've already done so that we can get the published version completed. But there is the version that was approved by the council should be available online.
Final laid out meaning with the pictures
Yes,
and
yes, that's
so
what
that could
we're
be
working
bound
on.
and
Yes,
produced.
yes.
What's the timing on that?
Well, we are working with council staff, noting, that they've got some other priorities, but we hope to get that wrapped up within the next month or two.
Within the next month or two. So by the end of the fiscal year,
We hope so.
we could assume that that will be available.
Yes.
Okay. Could that be shared with all council members when it is completed and then distributed to the publicly? I think this is very important. We're talking about spending taxpayer dollars to implement a plan. We need to have the plan available in a final formatted version for them to see. I think that's important for us to demonstrate. So the answer is by the end of the fiscal year. Okay, that answers that question. My last question, then I'll turn to colleagues on these, and then I do think we should just go through one by one. But
Sure.
On the curbside management, so council staff raised, this is a joint partnership, $100,000 each from the department, the planning department, and from Department of Transportation. The suggestion of council staff was the Department of Transportation has not requested this funding, so this could be delayed. As a result of that, your point is, I just want to make sure I'm clarifying this and understanding it, that the intention all along was that you would do the first, instead of, if it's a $200,000 project, instead of each entity requesting half over 2 fiscal years, the arrangement that it sounds like you made with the department was you would go first, request the first 100,000, and they would come in second and request the second 100,000. Am I understanding that
That's correct.
correctly? So it was never intended that you would each request 50,000 and then you would each request 50,000 essentially.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. And then that is one of your high priorities.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Colleagues?
I would just quickly say that I do not, and you heard me say this when we met, this whole idea of hiring consultants for something that you can do in-house is not okay by me. So I'm going to say that on the record. But I'm ready to go one by one because otherwise it's just so confusing.
Okay. We are gonna vote one by one. I appreciate that, but I think it is helpful for us to understand what the department considers to be their top priorities as we prioritize ourselves. And I think, both interests need to be considered. What the department considers the most important is those who are doing the work, but also the council is dictating the work plan, and our priorities, I think, are critical and should be at the forefront. So with that, Councilmember Jawanda.
Yeah, I would just say the way that was presented, whatever, I did not appreciate that. I felt like it was presented as if here's what we think we really should do, regardless of what you want, and we set the work plan. So I just think that needs to be understood throughout the department. And the consultant issue is a big issue. I asked about this when we met as well. I need to know, we need to have follow-up in this committee on the level of the amount of consultants that are being used and what they're being used for and why they're being used. And if to the extent that there's a mismatch, I know consultants are needed. If there's a mismatch in the expertise in the department, we need to have a better insight into that. And I know I mentioned that, and you said you would help provide that, because I think most of these things, many of them, are for consultants to do the work. And I understand it can be very arcane in depth and you might not have the expertise, but I just think we need to have visibility into that.
Yeah, well, before you respond, I will suggest June and July are already packed. And so I don't think it's realistic right after the budget for this committee to come back, because we put off all of the land use related issues and a number of follow-ups that we did before the budget, realistically. But I do think you're right, and I will suggest that we come back in September, soon after the recess, and have a session where we talk about specific but also macro level of the decisions of when to use consultants, when not, how the agency is determining that. My sense is there's probably times where specific levels of expertise are needed, and it's not realistic to have that ongoing at the department at any, on a regular basis from a cost benefit perspective. But the questions of when those choices get made, how they get made, I think are really important for us to understand. So I do think we should come back and talk about it, but I'll turn to you, Director Stern.
Certainly. First, I just wanted to say I certainly did not intend for the planning department to tell the council, what your job is. When I offered that ranking, I just wanted to give that information to you, just so you can weigh that as you consider which projects to select, if any, from the priority list. So I did want to clarify that. That was really what my intention was. With regards to consultants, I do recall that conversation that we had, Councilmember Jawando, and already asked our team to start pulling that data together. So we do have a lot of that information, but we can save that for a future time for a detailed discussion. The one thing I will note with regards to how we use consultants is that typically they are for very discrete one-time tasks that are a part of a larger project in many cases. So for example, with the Randolph Road Corridor study, for example, we would use some of that funding to hire a consultant to do a market analysis. We don't typically hire consultants for the majority of our projects to basically run the entire project. There's really only very limited circumstances where we would do that. So it's really, there's a piece of it with regards to either a master plan or a corridor study where there's a very discrete expertise, a very specialized expertise, and we need that piece as a part of a larger project. So that's just typically what our general approach is.
Okay, appreciate that. I think we're going to come back, and in September, so staff will work to schedule that with the department and with the rest of our teams, but we will come back to that. But I think it's a really important point. Okay, unless there are other overarching comments on this, we're going to go through one by one. I think the benefit is in slightly different order, but the 4 top priorities of the department are the first 4 that we will go through, which I do think. Randolph Road Corridor Study, this was identified by the department as one of the top priorities. Council staff recommended it as a priority.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, I can say, obviously, this is like, I have 4 kids. It's like choosing between kids. They're all important. I love you all, I say, like I say every morning. But, we have to prioritize. And, I have a little bias on this one because I lived off Randolph Road for a long time. And it's, I felt the wind of the 65-mile-an-hour car coming by and blowing me to the side. So it's a need. And I've also wanted to go to a restaurant near there, so the impetus of this study to figure out 15-minute living in that area is an important thing. And this is to do the connectivity, Georgia and Randolph, market analysis, as you mentioned. Mm-hmm. So I personally would be fine with this one. The other reason is that I like that you're saying there's a lot of corridors like this in the county, and this, as I understand it, as I read and we discussed, would be a kind of a case study for how you might approach this type of 15-minute living, which is a core principle of Thrive in other parts of the county. Is that fair?
That's correct. And we actually have a corridor master plan underway right now for University Boulevard. So this is sort of another way that we can look at corridors. This is an area that already has an adopted sector plan. So this is an opportunity to go back and look at how we can come up with some new strategies to jumpstart activity there. The other thing I wanted to note about the Randolph Road Corridor Study, which is focusing on the Glenmont area, is that the study area is within an equity focus area. And those two corridors, Georgia and Randolph Road, are along the Vision Zero high injury network as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Could I just ask a follow-up, if that's okay with you, Councilmember Jawanda?
Sure.
The full 75,000, can you not hire a consultant unless you get the full 75,000, or could you work with a lower amount than that and still carry out most of this or get this work rolling and move forward in some way?
I'm going to ask one of our division chiefs to speak to that question. Carrie Sanders.
Hi, Carrie Sanders, Mid-County Division Chief. We can work with a lower amount. We had anticipated using some of that funding for canvassing, door-to-door canvassing, which we could potentially do that in-house. So I think we could reduce that amount to, let's say, 50,000, which would help cover the transportation multimodal analysis as well as the market analysis, which we think will be really important to identifying steps to advance the master plan.
Yeah, appreciate that. I interjected, so I'll turn back to Councilmember Jawanda.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and that sounds great to me. And I'll help. I'll come canvas. So include
We
me.
will take you up on that.
Include me on one of the canvases. So I'm fine with it.
This is my district. I didn't want to go first, but I did knock on over 8,000 doors, including that area. So I will join the canvas too. I think we'll be fine if the three of us do it together. You're welcome to my district.
I'm in. Anytime.
And I will add Randolph Road, Georgia Avenue. Those are the areas where you see lots of crashes coming in. People have died on these roads. So this is also part of our Vision Zero commitment. Alongside Little Falls Parkway, but I won't go there. So I'm glad this is moving forward, and I do agree with the 50K, and we'll help you canvas. So,
Thank you.
Okay, so that's going to be 50,000, and are we putting that on as a high priority?
yes.
Okay, 50,000 is a high priority, and then the reduction would be 25,000, and we're not going to put that on the reconciliation list at all. Okay, next, Germantown Employment Corridor check-in. Also listed as one of the top priorities for the department. It's $50,000. The council staff recommendation is to have it as a priority. Same question here. Can this be done? Is this an all or nothing? If you don't get 50,000, you can't do any of the work, or could you hire a consultant to do a bulk of the work for less than 50,000?
We can certainly get the project started. I would also ask Patrick Butler, who will answer that question.
Mr. Butler, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Given the discussion today, we already obviously put a lower amount forward. We were trying to be very tight with our numbers. So, but again, hearing the tough discussion in your considerations today, I think we could probably do a little less, although we are already very, very tight on that. So,
Do you think you could still do the work with 40,000?
yeah, I think that would be the lowest I would like to go. But again, I understand your decision makers, so I would appreciate that if you could put that forward.
Okay, 40,000. Turn to colleagues, see if they're comfortable.
I'm fine with that. It's an important study, so yeah.
All right, 40,000, and are we going to put that on as priority or high priority?
I mean, in light of we got a little cut, and it's important for the department. I'm fine with the high priority.
Me too. I'm thinking of Marilyn Balkan right now. I visualize her.
Yeah.
So I will say high priority.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think we need to acknowledge ensuring that we're providing the same level of interest in up county as we do in down county areas, and this is a critical area that we need to be providing a lot of attention to. So I appreciate that and agree with colleagues there. Okay, Thrive Montgomery 2050 implementation. We have discussed that. Okay, so I'll turn to colleagues.
I'm gonna start. I'm gonna say we're gonna eliminate this one. Honestly, I will say no.
Okay, what is the impact for moving forward implementation of Thrive if we kill this project entirely?
There is certainly work that we can do in-house on this, but again, I will ask Division Chief Carrie McCarthy, who can speak in more detail.
Okay, I
about
think what
was
colleagues would
intended.
like to know is not that this work is not important,
Yes.
but what work could be done over the course of the next year in-house to move and advance these issues forward before potentially hiring a consultant for the metrics for perpetuity. Because ultimately, what this project really is, my sense is to put together the metrics and measurables that you will be able to hold the county accountable, ourselves in the planning department and in the county accountable to implementing Thrive for perpetuity, for the next, till 2050, give or take. But what work could be done in the interim before that happens, if any?
We can certainly do some basic work setting up the framework, but we felt like given the 80 metrics in the plan and the ambiguity of some of them, like civic engagement, some of the vagaries, like we weren't sure we had all the expertise in-house. We also weren't sure about the availability of data, and so some of the money was thoughts for purchasing additional data. So coming from, we've had other projects such as the Community Equity Index, where we had put in a budget request. We did not get the funding. We've proceeded to do it in-house, and it's been very challenging, and we've also been a couple of years behind schedule. So it really may delay us, moving forward on this.
I just want to understand that a little bit better.
Yeah.
Part of the money is to purchase data. This is county data that you need to better understand, or this is broader national or international
it's outside
data?
data. There's new data sources tracking, things like Placer AI data of that tracks people and where they go. And so some of the metrics we thought we might need additional data to understand them better.
Well, I think it would be helpful for us to better understand what the goal of this project is. I don't think it's clear to us. It sounds like colleagues would rather hold off on this and wait and see. Do we want to drop the 55,600 to priority instead of high priority, or do we want to eliminate it and come back over the course of next year, better understand how we're going to move this forward, and then include it in next year's submission? I'll yield to Councilmember Joanna.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. Obviously, we want to implement and track the metrics on Thrive. It's a question I get a lot in the community. We put a lot into, Councilman Freitz and I, and obviously others, to pass it. But to the question of the printed document being out there and just being clear on it, it's more of a timing question. This could be a high priority next year, or and I think I would like to see you be able to make progress internally, between now and that point. Is that something that you could do?
We can certainly do that. The one thing I do want to note is that we are already implementing Thrive Montgomery 2050 right now through the Project Center in Our Work program. But with regards to the questions that we're hearing, we can certainly go back and look in more detail and look at what we can get started now over the next fiscal year, and then consider what might be an inappropriate request.
And even if it's a rudimentary, like thing that you build upon yourself, to it's like, here's what we've started on, here's the track, and then you give that to like you build out a more robust thing next year.
Yes.
Obviously, I know several Councilman Fanny Gonzalez and I, we want to work with you on the implementation of the the attainable housing strategy, right? So we're going to do that, but let's. Yeah, so I would be comfortable then, in light of those answers, to just remove it for this year.
Okay, it sounds like it's the will of the body to remove this year, to get greater clarification on what the outside consultant and the outside data would be, what the costs associated and what the goals are related to the expenditure, and to potentially look at it next year, and in the meantime move forward in-house with these efforts. So, curbside management project, $100,000. We heard this is a partnership between the Department of Transportation and the Planning Department, and the goal here is 100,000 from the Planning Department and 100,000 from DOT. I'll just note for you for future, if you're going to do a partnership with an outside agency, I would recommend splitting the costs in the same fiscal year, because the way our budget process works, every time for you and for them, it's going to look like $100,000 additional one-time expense, and it's going to be on the chopping block. I mean, that's just the reality in a tight budget. And so if this truly is a partnership, you should have 50-50 skin in the game, you know, when it happens, and that way if it's cut, it's all cut, you know, and if it's, you know, proceeded, it's all proceeded, and that you're, you know, going in tandem. You know, we can't relitigate that. I don't think it's worth changing that now, but just for future reference, if you're working with another county department or agency and you're, you know, splitting the costs, you know, splitting them in the same fiscal year in the same manner, I think is a better way to do it from a process standpoint for transparency to the public, and it's better for our budget process here internally. So I just wanted to note that.
Sure.
Okay, colleagues, thoughts on this? I'll ask the same question. What, if anything, could you do for less than $100,000? And how much of this is being spent on consultants?
Our division chief, who would be here to help answer that question, is on jury duty. But what I did ask him about this question, and the intent is to hire a consultant who has expertise in curbside management. This is an emerging area of expertise, because there are a lot of competing uses for curbsides, and figure out how to better manage those spaces. So that's really what the intent was in terms of the consultant assistance. You know, again, this is a type of project that we can certainly, you know, we have transportation planners on our staff. We can certainly get some work done on this, but I think the intent was to leverage more specialized expertise who may have been working in other jurisdictions to help figure out these issues.
Appreciate it. I think it's the will of committee members for us to hold off on this, to come back with DOT next year to share in the budget request and to move it forward. You know, we have lots of competing issues, and to me it seems that waiting an additional year, while important as the work might be, will not have an existential impact in service and in moving the county forward. But you know, come back next year with DOT, give us, you know, better understanding of, you know, how it's going to work, and I think there will be interest. My sense is at a later date. Okay, so that we have a committee recommendation on eliminating that from the reconciliation list. We will not be moving that forward. Great Seneca Plan, Urban Design Guidelines, Streetscape. This is $25,000. The staff recommended this as a priority, not a high priority, and the department did not list this as one of the top priorities.
We actually listed it as a reduction.
Yeah.
Because we can find funding within
Oh, this was the one that was that is not reflected in the packet.
Yes.
Excuse
Yes.
me. So saved us a step.
Yes.
Recommended as a reduction by the department without objection. The committee will accept that reduction. We appreciate your willingness to do that. The next one is the same, I believe. Security Information Event Management, $75,800. The department in non-recommended cuts recommended this as a potential reduction, and without objection, the committee will accept that reduction. Unless
Yeah, to clarify, I believe this was a non-recommended reduction, so I'll see if they want to add.
Yeah.
That is correct, and it is part
I
of
think
our.
that's how I framed it, but go ahead.
We recommended that this is a non-recommended reduction because it is one of our major known commitments. So we did not list this as something that we would recommend the council cut.
Okay.
This is also it's a cybersecurity related tool that we share with Parks, so it is part of Parks priorities as well.
All right. How is it funded in the Parks Department? This is split.
This is the IT project?
Yes.
Yes.
So even split.
All right, but you included in your non-recommended cuts. Was it included in the Parks non-recommended cuts?
It was probably in one of the major known commitments where it wasn't.
Yeah,
highlighted
it's in
individually.
the contractual initiative, which I believe ended up with a high priority.
So at least it should be a high priority in planning as well.
Okay, I just want to note, one, Park and Planning is in the same commission, so it should come over in the same way. So if you have, a commitment here, it's being included in non-recommended cuts in a certain way in one department, it should be included in the exact same way in the other department, and for council staff, it should be reflected that way. I understand there were staffing changes here and very sensitive to that, but it's difficult for residents to follow what we are reviewing, and it's even difficult, frankly, for council members to understand what the recommendations and non-recommended cuts are, and I think we need to be better at that. And so I just want to note that. Okay, so $75,800. Can you explain what this is for? I mean, security information and event management sounds different than a cybersecurity IT contractual obligation. So can you explain that? I mean,
Certainly.
we're talking about this in very different ways, and I think we need to be very clear.
Well, that is exactly what this tool is. It is essentially a dashboard that is used to monitor the various IT systems that our joint IT department manages for both the planning and parks departments. It does have that particular name, but it is 100% a cybersecurity tool.
And so during an event, somebody on your IT department is looking to see if there is a cybersecurity breach?
It's intended to make sure that they have a very close window into what's actually happening in our system so that they can better head off any potential breaches that could occur and to make sure that the system is running securely.
Okay, and so event management is not related to like a parks event. It's
No,
related to
not at all.
a cybersecurity threat breach
It's
event.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Well, I would have expected that this had been worked out and understood better, and so we need to do a better job before coming to committee sessions of understanding these issues, but that is a very different dynamic, and I personally then think it should be a high priority if that's how we listed it in the Parks Department, but I want to get clarification on that. So I guess my recommendation would be that if this $75,800 is being split, which would be 151,600, excuse me, that it be handled the same way for, that we'd be recommending it to the reconciliation list in the same way. So my sense is that it was buried in a broader item,
Yes.
which should have been taken out and understood better.
Right, and we
but-
did not realize until this moment that there was a corresponding project in Park. So
Yeah,
we work with the departments to make sure we have clarity on that in the future.
Okay, well, we need to have clarity on that, obviously, and for moving forward, I think we need to do a better job of making sure that everybody's on the same page coming into these meetings so we can have these policy and budget discussions. But I think the committee recommendation, if it's okay, would be that we treat this security information and event management, which we have learned is really a cybersecurity tool that is used to monitor threats and is split between parks and planning, that be that be treated equitably, with parity between the two departments. We don't want to fund one half
Right.
of this line item, so let's reflect that in the committee recommendation. Okay, so we'll confirm offline, reflect that in the committee recommendation. Okay, now we're at the burial sites context study. This was recommended by council staff as a high priority. This was not listed as one of the top priorities for the department, and I think in fact was listed as one of the lowest priorities of the non-recommended cuts, as noted by Director Stern. Any comments from colleagues? This is the burial sites context.
Yeah,
Councilmember Joanna.
Sure, thank you. And just, I know I step out here, use restroom. On the Great Seneca, what did we do? Mix that, okay. And same thing with curbside management. We wait till next year on that.
DOT.
Perfect,
Coming
okay.
together.
I agree with both, just FYI, just wanted to confirm that. I think this one is one we should add as a high priority. It's consistent and analogous with our work on the Reconciliation and Remembrance Commission. We have put a big priority and appreciate the work that's been done. There are several sites that we hear about kind of often in the county, and this work of understanding our history, understanding this context, I think is really, really important. And so I would like to, especially in light of the savings we just made, put this back as a high priority.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'll just note there's a burial site along Piney Meeting House, and there have been some very challenging dynamics between the county's role, planning's understanding of it, and inclusion in the mapping of the burial sites. It's certainly an identified burial site. It was sold at tax sale by the county. There are a number of dynamics that we're working, myself and others with the executive branch to address that with a willing property owner who has been paying the taxes on this site amazingly. Once he learned that he had unknowingly bought a historic African-American cemetery and was prepared to raise the land and turn it into a buildable lot and sell it, and learned that it was a burial site and has not done that, and now would like to preserve it and make sure that it is being maintained as an appropriate burial site. But it just speaks to the importance of this work and the sensitivity that we need to have, the understanding that we need to have. So I agree with you, Councilmember Jawando. I think the planning department has done a good job in this area, but we could do a better job. And I think this project, it seems, would help us to build upon those efforts and to improve. And I think our county has some improvement here, frankly, with how we address these sites. So, Councilmember Fani Gonzalez.
In complete agreement.
All right, so we have a 3-0 committee recommendation for high priority, council staff recommendation for the $65,000 for the burial sites context study. Let's move on to the regional travel demand model transportation network database management tools. $75,000 request. It was not listed as a top priority by the department. And I don't know if there are comments from colleagues or whether we should. This was recommended as a priority by council staff.
Can I just add just really quickly?
Sure.
It was not within our what we call tier 1 or high priority list, but it was the first project listed for our second tier projects.
Got it. Can you walk us through the impacts if this isn't funded? What is being delayed a year, and what impact, if any, does that have on other projects and other programs and studies that the department is undertaking?
So again, I think council staff provided a good overview of this. This is essentially a Montgomery County tailored version of a new travel demand model that COG uses. And so we do have an existing model that we use, so the delay would be being able to use a more updated model that COG I think will be rolling out very shortly this year.
Okay, so the question is, do we fund this now and have this ready for when COG completes their tool, or whether this potentially waits till next year in order to undertake it, to have some time to even understand what the COG tool is? Unless there's objections, I think we can, my sense is holding off on this in light of budget challenges that we have, and looking at this for next year. I do think this is important, and I do think we want to fulfill what the COG tool has done and want to make sure that it is specific to Montgomery County, as we have done in a number of different arenas. And obviously, TMDs and TDMs and the way that we handle these issues are really important for how we plan both transportation and housing, jobs, and other amenities. And so, it's not a reflection that this isn't important. It's just a reflection that maybe we don't have the resources likely to do that this year.
Agreed.
Okay. Without objection, we will not be recommending adding that to the reconciliation list. Now let's move on to the redlining segregation mapping project. It's recommended as $100,000. It was not listed as one of the top priorities by the department. It was recommended as a high priority by council staff, and I'll turn to colleagues first.
I don't even know what this exactly is. What?
It literally goes through the history of the land records to determine where there was mandatory discrimination in the land records that said you will not sell to blacks or whoever. This was done inside the Beltway already. We reviewed it and actually looked at what current discrimination patterns were where we had those deeds that were discriminatory in the past, and what was found was it had no relationship to current discrimination because it was not enforced since 1950. So it's a great project. It ends up with a map that you can then research and have all of the deeds for going back, but it would not affect how we go forward. So that's why it was the lowest priority of those projects.
If I can also just to add some additional context. So as Chair Zias noted, we did complete the phase 1 of the mapping segregation project within the Beltway. And again, identifying, we have mapped, those areas, those parcels that had racially restrictive covenants. The intent of this project is to extend that work through other parts of the county. Just wanted to note that this is a project that actually does rely very heavily on consultant assistance, unlike other projects where we hire consultants. For phase 1 of the mapping segregation project, because it requires going deed by deed, we hire 2 full-time consultants to do that work. Our staff obviously are involved. They have to provide oversight, and ultimately, they prepared the summary of the work and prepared the map that came out of the analysis. But this is something, just for your own information, that does require a very heavy level of consultant assistance.
Okay, so how much of the 100,000 is it completely the consultants, and the rest is within existing department resources? Is that basically what this is?
Yes.
So, and then is there an opportunity to start this work for less than 100,000 with a consultant, or basically you prefer holding off until you can get the full 100,000 and complete the work?
We would prefer to hold off because, again, our historic preservation staff has a very heavy workload, and so part of the reason why we rank this as a lower priority is just because of the staff capacity.
Based on staff capacity. Yes. So even if you hired the consultants, the ability of the historic preservation staff to implement what you get from the consultants is somewhat limited.
Yes.
Okay. I'll just note, the work inside the Beltway has been terrific and really helpful. I do wonder how much inside the Beltway is the highest concentration of these restrictions, just given the land use pattern. These were neighborhoods predominantly that were built when these covenants were legal, at least the de jure version of redlining and segregation and discriminatory practices and covenants. Outside the Beltway, we do have a number of really important historic black communities that are fairly well known and well researched, although we could use more research and more interest on that. But there are far fewer older developer-built subdivisions outside the Beltway than there are inside the Beltway, just proportionally. So I do think that's something for us to think about, as well as the staff capacity, but I'll turn to Councilmember Jawanda.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate the context, which is literally what we're talking about here, context for our decisions. I actually am going to be okay with not including this one this time, because I think I want to work with you to rescope it, in the sense that we've talked about this in the past, and I've said this in previous council. Who owns land and how they acquired it and who was not allowed to own land is critical to the decisions we make today about zoning, upzoning, allowing people to move forward with projects. I brought this up when in our first battle on the on the then Fed committee with the Veers Mill Master Plan, when there was a 2-acre plot of land, and this is inside the Beltway, right? 2-acre plot of land that had been owned along with a community that had been owned by a family for a long time, and they wanted to redevelop it. And the question was, well, what are we going to allow? Because we want more housing. And I brought up the point that they had at some point in their ownership given this 2 acres of land to the county to develop a road, and then now we're asking for it back. And someone said to me, well, it's their land, they should give it back. I said, no, it's not their land. And even if it was their land at one point, they were given it at a time when people were denied land systematically. And so now when you come to me and say you want to redevelop it for profit, that needs to be factored in. So I say all that to say I would like to do more inside the Beltway, where the restrictions were the heaviest, to understand the historical context of who owned land and how and why, and take that and factor that into our land use decisions today. And so we can work on that more, but so I'm actually okay with I agree with Councilman Friedson, the outside the Beltway and places where people were forced to live who were people of color and that were formerly plantations and the like, that were sharecropping happened and the like later. So it's a little different. It's still something we need to know. But I think for our land use, the dense land use decisions we're making today, we need to have more context on the history of of redlining and segregation in those places. So I'd like to work with you on that. And so that probably takes some time to talk about and scope out. And I think it will have a lot more immediate impact on the decisions we make on the committee. Do you understand where I'm going with
Yes,
that?
I do. I
Okay.
do.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I have a similar feeling there, and I think perhaps some offline conversations can happen, some rethinking and retooling within the department, and then maybe we can come back. I think well in advance of the budget. I'm thinking like end of this calendar year, kind of November, December timeframe, or January when we come back from recess. That time frame to give time to really understand before this comes back to the council. So some conversations to understand what the interest level is and what council members would like to see, and then I think a public discussion of what the scope and the thought process is and what we intend to get. This is a important conversation I think should occur publicly. There's certain back and forth preparations that should take place offline so that we're prepared for those meetings. So I just want to kind of note that for the schedule. And I do think the covenant conversation is important, but it is low-hanging fruit, right? And I think that's what Councilmember Joanna, without putting words in his mouth, I think was getting at. And perhaps the deeper dive and the next phase of that work and those areas and communities of what the broader impacts were that aren't directly related perhaps to covenants. I think there is a broad understanding of redlining and covenants. I think what there is a less direct understanding of the deeper dive into the consequences of all of these various decisions. And I think that there is broad interest on this committee to have the department really lead us in work to better understand and shine a light on those issues. But I think it's going to take some time to do that in an appropriate way.
And just so you know our schedule, the department budget comes to the full commission in November. So the committee, of course, can do whatever it wants once it gets our budget. But our budget cycle is much in advance of the county's budget.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So my thought was that conversations could happen prior to you going to the commission, to the department going to the commission in November, and that we could have a public conversation based on what the request is to the commission,
Right.
and flesh out any scope-related changes and have a better understanding before it formally comes to the council in our budget cycle. So I thought post-November, pre-November lead-up conversations to better understand and think through the scope and the opportunity here. Post-November conversation at council for us to understand what direction this is heading in and what the thoughts are for the department. And then ultimately we'll take it up around this time next year, assuming that it is coming back.
I do have a couple of suggestions just to follow up on that. The first is that we do have our semi-annual presentation to the council that's typically in October. We typically go over, quite a number of things that we've worked on over the fiscal year, so that's sort of one opportunity to revisit this conversation. But I also would suggest perhaps we could schedule a time for the committee to get a full briefing on the Phase 1 mapping segregation project. The board has had that briefing, but the council has not. And it was actually a two-part briefing that was given to the board, both on the analysis itself and those findings, and then additional work looking at, well, for the areas that did have racially restrictive covenants, did that actually impact who lives there now? And so we do have some findings on that. So I would suggest that we brief the committee on
Yeah, I
on
appreciate it.
that.
I don't agree with the first recommendation. I don't think there's enough time at the semi-annual to
Right.
give this topic the level of conversation and discussion that it deserves. But I appreciate that recommendation. But I think the second recommendation is a very good one. And so I think we'll look at the schedule. But I do think November-ish timeframe. Give or take. Ideally, it could be pushed later, as I was noting, if need be. But to come back to the committee and discuss in detail the Phase 1 aspect of it, and I think that would provide an opportunity for us to discuss what should Phase 2 look like. I think what you heard from Councilmember Jawanda, which I agree with, and it sounds like we're getting nods from our colleague, Councilmember Natalie Fana-Gonzalez. The next phase may be a deeper dive into the area that's already been covered, as opposed to extending the geographic area to do something similar, just given the land use context and the historical context of that land and what might be the most helpful and actionable based on our policy decisions currently related to land use policy. Is that okay? So we're going to hold off on that and not recommend it. The ADA Act compliance. This is a question of whether it's a high priority or whether it should even be on the reconciliation list at all. Isn't this a legal requirement? So I just
It is, and again, it's like the compensation, were it not for the fact that this is over the executive, we would say, just put it in. So another one of the highest of high priorities where
Right.
we have to list it just to track it.
Yeah, I think it's
But-
important on these then that, and this should be true of all outside agencies, but the high priority, there should be a compensation asterisk and there should be a legal requirement double asterisk.
Yep.
Because we don't have a choice of whether to be ADA compliant. I mean, not
Right.
only is
Well-
that the type of inclusive community that we aspire to be, it's the one that we are legally required
Yep.
to comply with.
We'll figure out a way to differentiate these.
Okay, I just think that's
categories,
important
yeah.
because
Absolutely.
there's a big category of 65 million, but ADA compliance is not a negotiable issue like debt is not a negotiable issue.
Exactly.
We pay those bills have been have gone out and we're paying the invoice and this is similar. So yeah, Councilor Toronto.
Yeah, and since we have the benefit of you being here today, Ms. Michelson, because you're stepping up for Ms. Dunn, who we send our love to, we did not agree with a similar ADA compliance update in the context of the CIP, or no, in the context of the operating budget on the education side, or in another context. I would just ask that all ADA and all compensation be given that.
Yeah.
Which is,
That's
I
what I
think,
was
what we
saying.
said. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
look at how we're treating things in
Across.
different departments and
Yeah.
agencies.
Yeah, and that's what I was asking, that the asterisk double, however you want to reflect it is true of all outside agencies, which of course would include MCPS, but any outside agency, these are not options that we have to fulfill our legal obligations. Okay, now we have the series of positions that are all listed on the priority list, not high priority list. Any comments from the department on these and what the impact would be if they were not funded?
Certainly. One of the positions is an existing position, but it is the funding has been frozen. That is the adequate public facilities planner position. The other four would be new positions, as noted earlier. The visual media and imaging specialist request, we have taken that out of our request. It's a part-time position. We will repurpose an existing vacant part-time position for that. And so it is essentially a net of 3 new positions plus funding for 1 existing position. And the one thing I will say about all of them is that these are not, brand new functions that our department would like to have staff do. We are actually already paying contractors, whether through term contracts or just as a recurring contract, to do these services. And so that's why we determined that these are positions that should become part of our regular complement of positions rather than continuing to fund contractors. One thing, just be mindful of the earlier conversation about a focus on not adding a lot of new positions. If the committee has some questions about adding all of these positions, then our alternative ask would be, because we included a $207,000 reduction by increasing salary lapse to 5.5%, if we could instead use $132,000 of that funding to fund 1 new full-time position, that would help meet some of our need, and we can work on seeing if we can repurpose some of these other asks, repurpose existing positions to meet some of these other asks, or defer some of these at another time.
So just to clarify the question, we do need to come back and talk about contracting. There's 2 different categories of contracting. One is these ongoing contracting work, which has been an issue in other departments and agencies, and we need to get a better handle on that. We don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish, but at the same time, we need to really think through these costs and what the impacts are and how the work is being done, and the consistency and quality of that work. So the first recommendation is an existing position that would be delayed. It's a vacant position that would be delayed for $132,927 that staff is recommended to be on the priority list. Is that what you're referencing when you are saying that you'd prefer to have that to be able to be hired out of lapse, that amount of
Yes, and
money?
we can have the funding for that position.
Yeah, and I will just note that across the board, we have not said that a reduction somewhere guarantees you a specific ad. And in my mind, the way that we're going to be able to afford the compensation increases is through these reductions. So it's not like there's dollars there that are available, or that the committee could say, here's where it will be used.
Okay, I'll turn to Councilmember Fonnie Gonzalez.
I am going to agree with the staff on this one. Sorry.
So, okay, so the staff is recommending putting these on priority, recognizing the fact that they might not be able to be funded. Councilmember Joanda?
See, when you're the chair, you can just kind of see what the people on the left and your right think, and then you did. No, I know. I'm saying we go back and forth. We're doing the heavy lifting here. So
Trying to bring everybody together.
Yeah, exactly.
We're doing a pretty good job of it so far today.
I think so. I agree with the council staff recommendation. Look, I mean, we are. This is a tough budget, and we're trying to. I mean, if there was I just want to put a finer point on it. Is there within these positions? What's the prioritization?
Our prioritization.
Say that again. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Certainly, would be to get the funding for the existing adequate public facilities position that has been in our staff complement but not funded. And then our next priority would be the forest conservation planner position. That we actually have a contractor who's doing that work now, is a term contract employee. And that person works with our Reforest Montgomery program, which, as you know, is a very successful program. It is funded by fee in lieu funding related to forest conservation from development projects. And given that the county's law has just been updated, the state law has just been updated related to forest conservation, we certainly need more staff capacity in order to meet the demand.
Understood. Oh,
sorry, please.
So, on the growth in infrastructure in the schools, that's something you have to have on board to do the job that you have to do, and the public demands that.
Yes.
And with the enrollment going up and, going the way it's going, that's going to be increasingly important. We added 2,000 students this year in MCPS, and so, I think that one I would be okay with adding. The adequate public facilities planner.
Can I just add one other
Yeah.
thing, just as another reason why we
Sure.
think it's important? That person would be supporting the growth and infrastructure policy update, which we are launching. And in fact, the person who is the term contract employee currently in that
Yeah.
role supported the last update. And because there were a number of changes in the growth and infrastructure policy that created some new requirements that the planning department has to fulfill each year as part of the annual school tests, that term contract employee is already doing that
So there's a
work.
lot hanging on this position that's important to
Yes.
what we do. So I
Yes.
would recommend we add that one position as a high priority. I understand what you're saying on the forest conservation, but I think the rest need to go on as a priority. And you can do your own advocacy with council members, as I know you will.
So adequate public facilities position to not do the lapse, 132,927. That's an existing position that hasn't been funded. You're recommending putting that on as a high priority?
Yeah.
I'd be comfortable putting that on a high priority and not putting on the other new positions at all, personally.
I agree with the chair.
Yeah, so why don't, if,
Sounds like you agree.
Yeah.
And I'll agree with that.
yeah, okay, so why don't we just do that? I think it gives the best opportunity to actually get support for the one position that you have prioritized it and have gone all in. The growth and infrastructure policy is coming back to us. It's one of the most important things that we do. We need adequate staffing for that. I think we need to, prioritizing means prioritizing, so let's prioritize it. So we have a committee recommendation. We're going to make the adequate public facilities planner 3, 132,927 high priority. We are not going to make any other recommendations regarding the new positions. And we are going to accept the increasing salary lapse from 4.5% to 5.5% and the reduction of $207,313. Okay.
Great. We're going to now move on to Central Administrative Services. As a reminder, this is the portion of the budget you will be deciding with Prince George's County. And I do want to make a correction. At the bottom of page 25, you see that it says it's an increase of approximately 1.7 million. But the increase is lower than that because the FY23 base number that we had used to calculate it did not include the annualization, the compensation increases from FY23 that needed to be moved from a separate non-DA into the departments. So the actual total increase for CAS is $1,403,000 or a 15% increase. When we're looking at, if you look at page 27, you will see that there are a lot of recommended additions to this budget, which are include hiring a lot of new positions, which makes staff a little bit of nervous now, given what we've said about FY25. And without commenting at all on the merit of any of these positions, what we're recommending is a total of $500,000, and it said not including compensation, but I want to correct that to say it would include $291,167 of compensation and this is from the FY, part of the increase that we had not reflected early on in the budget, and the remainder would be for major known commitments. The major known commitments for this budget are approximately $452,000, and looking at those, 350 approximately were for inflationary increases, which in the Parks Department you already said, okay, we could do without those. We would have to take this recommendation to Prince George's County. And the way the process works, so you know, is that I would reach out to my counterpart at Prince George's County and saying, here's what our council is thinking. She would share what Prince George's County is thinking, and we try and see if we can find a midpoint if we disagree. So my recommendation is that the starting point for our discussions with Prince George's County would be to only fund $500,000 out of the increase, the revised increase, which I mentioned, the 1,400,000, approximately 1,430,000, and that would be the starting point. So we would have ongoing discussion.
Yeah, can you just I was a little confused by this.
Yeah, that was very
to be honest with
sorry.
you. So, I mean, I understand how the process works. We go through it every year. We agree to something preliminarily, then we have a negotiation between Montgomery and Prince George's, and we agree to it, and we ultimately vote to ratify it at the joint meeting. The 18% increase for central administrative services is what?
And the correct number should be 15%.
Right.
Not,
okay. So that should be 15%, and what of that is mandatory compensation?
Yes, and so
It's about 5%, you said?
Right. So the difference in why it went down to 15% is the compensation. There's a compensation increase of 291, and I'll ask John Kroll to correct me if I'm saying this wrong. The compensation portion is 291,167 as part of the total increases recommended for FY24. So the remainder, by doing 500,000, we'd be allowing them to fund major known commitments of approximately 200,000, and it would not include any of the new positions that are enhancing their services.
And what, if we agree to the 500,000 total, which includes compensation, what would the increase be? Instead of 15%, what is the number?
Around 5%, because we got actually even more than that. Well, it's about 1.4 is 15%, so 500,000 is slightly more than a third of that.
Okay. All right. So committee members comfortable with the staff recommendation of 500,000?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We have a committee recommendation.
Great. Okay, moving on to the special revenue funds, and special revenue funds are a little bit, they're not quite enterprise funds because we never know when funding is going to come in from some of these funds, but when funding is provided, it is used to fund specific programs. So for example, development review, special revenue funds, when funds come in, it goes towards the development review process. And why these are special revenue funds is in some cases there is a need for a general fund transfer to help complete the funding for the program. So you will see the special revenue funds for FY24. The Commission has asked for a $500,000 transfer from the administration fund to support the development review special revenue fund because they don't believe that the fees that they will get over the coming year will be sufficient, and the executive has supported that, as does staff. So no changes there. I'll turn it back to you.
So this is not in the packet because we just heard about it recently, but there was a joint PHP Public Safety Committee last week, and the Public Safety Committee recommended $25,000 for police accountability, and that's for the park police. I should have opened with that. And the Public Safety Committee had asked for this committee to take up that issue. I believe the estimate had been for $90K, and Public Safety is asking for $25,000, and that includes psychological testing and other training. So I just wanted to note that request was before you.
And we agree.
Yeah, we agreed there, so without objection, we'll agree to the request of the joint committee on which we sit, which I'm not quite sure why we need to do that, but always appreciate when colleagues have the courage and conviction to agree with ourselves. Any other items? I think without objection, we'll agree to all of the staff recommendations here and the joint committee recommendation. Any other outstanding items we have?
The last thing was the racial equity and social justice considerations. As you know, the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice asked departments to complete surveys and gave them ratings. The commission is, of course, not a county agency, so they weren't asked to provide a response, but their comments on how their budgets and work programs are promoting that is at the last 2 pages of your packets. I just verbatim have their responses here. Parks noted, as we discussed earlier, the OBI for Black Hill Regional Park, staff and funding for the Parks Activation Program, and the athletic field team personnel expansion. And summer and trades internships is how they're promoting their racial equity and social justice efforts. And then planning had noted as part of their equity agenda for planning, they have their equity focus areas, and that includes the Randolph Road Corridor Study, the mapping segregation phase 2, and the burial sites context study.
Great. Okay. Well, we appreciate it. It was noted earlier by the directors that this is not just part of the work or individual projects within the work. It is core to all of the work that is being done, which is the whole point of why we have moved forward in the way that we have as a council. And so I just want to acknowledge that, particularly really focusing in on the equity focus areas, a slight tweak to the equity emphasis areas by COG, which also look at language proficiency, which is an important part of our equity work in Montgomery County, given the demographic makeup of our community, which we appreciate. And so we thank the departments and the commission for your continued efforts on that front. I don't think there's a decision point on this, but we wanted to lift up and acknowledge those issues in each of these conversations. So with that, I think we have a committee recommendation and a series of them. This is a robust discussion. I really appreciate colleagues. We appreciate the commission and the directors and council staff. Thank you to each of you for stepping in as you have and really making sure that we continue on the important work that we are doing. We think there's a lot of members of park and planning staff, and really want to acknowledge and appreciate all the work that each of you are doing every day on these efforts, and thank you for sitting through this meeting as we dug into the work that you do without prejudice. But we respect you doing your job, and we're trying very hard to do ours as well. So thank you for your work. And with that, we're going to move on to our next item. We have follow-up for Department of Housing and Community Affairs. We are going to call up our acting director of DHCA, Scott Bruton. I see Ms. Salem is here. I think Ms. Gentry may be here as well. And we have council staff, Mr. Mia and Ms. Jong. While our colleagues in DHCA are coming up here to join us, I will turn it over to council staff, and you can walk us through the packet, and we can take issues as they come up.
Okay, absolutely. I'll go quickly, but just 2 upfront notes. One, the HIF is a special non-tax supported fund, so council staff did approach this a little differently than a tax supported fund. Having said that, there is considerable general fund dollars as a revenue source of the HIF, so just to keep that in mind. And secondly, very high level, council staff is recommending approval as recommended by the CE, with the exception of one item, which we'll go into a little later, the 3% inflationary adjustment for nonprofit contracts. We're recommending that as high priority, consistent with other budgets, inflationary adjustments of similar nature. Overall, looking at section B of the packet on page 3, you'll see that the HIF the appropriation for the HIF is only going up $591,000 for FY24, a 1.2% increase. Most of that is in personnel costs. As we discussed on April 20th, we have about 4.1 FTEs shifting from the grant fund to the HIF, and that's a main driver of the cost increase on the personnel cost side. The operating cost side is very modest, $5,000. And I will also say, looking at section D of the packet, although the overall increase in HIF is somewhat low, it does obscure some changes in revenue sources that are happening. Namely, as we talked last week with the joint HHS committee, PHP committee session, recordation tax is going down by over $3 million, thus reducing expenditures for rental assistance programs. On the other hand, the CE is recommending a $3.5 million increase in general fund transfers into the HIF to meet the council resolution target of 2.5%, which it is meeting for FY24. Beyond that, there are some adjustments to the debt service fund in terms of what's going out from the HIF to pay for debt service for both the county's taxable bonds, which are issued through the HIF, which is issued through the CIP, but the debt service is paid for through the HIF. There's a decreased cost for the Housing Production Fund bonds that HOC administers, reflecting just the timing of when the bonds would be issued, and as well as interest rate changes. The other major change on the revenue side for the HIF is land sale proceeds. These are, of course, one-time revenues that come in based on a county disposition of property. The actual amount for FY23 was higher than the approved amount, but for FY24, we're not. The budget is not assuming any land sale proceeds, although we are tracking some potential dispositions for FY24. I'll stop there, see if there's any question on the revenue piece of this, or I can keep going.
No question on the revenue piece. We don't need to get into it today, but there is a proposal before the council that we won't talk about here that will be coming to the full council with a recommendation from the GEO committee related to recordation taxes, and that would have an impact here if, as recommended at the GEO committee, it moves forward to full council. Don't want to get into a full discussion here because we'll be getting into a full discussion at the council, but I thought that it should be noted. Unless there are any questions on resources here, I think we can move on to individual items.
Okay. On the next section will be appropriation expenditure sides. As I mentioned, personal costs are increasing by about 4.1 FTEs, reflecting the shift from the grant fund, the positions that are shifting. The rental assistance program we talked about, HHS programs, that's a separate funding source than what's in the rental assistance programs, but that funding is staying flat for FY24. The neighborhoods to call home line item, it covers various nonprofit contracts, including the inflationary adjustments. I will note there's a $395,000 cost increase to reflect essentially federal funds provided during the pandemic have gone away for FY24, and so the CE is recommending replacing those funds with HIF funds, basically, to continue those programs. Home ownership assistance, there's no increase. It stays at $4 million for FY24, same as 23. The department's available to give you an update on the employee assistance portion of that program, which is in the process of being implemented. So we can stop there and discuss that.
Do you want to just quickly, our understanding is this program, which was supposed to start a lot sooner, is finally ready to move forward as of today, we're understanding. So if you want to just quickly confirm the timing of that program, and just to note, this was last year the county executive proposed taking $1 million out of the existing homeowner assistance programs and dedicating it to county public employees and teachers. And the committee had real concerns about that because this program hadn't been fleshed out with labor partners. We didn't understand how it was going to work, when it would be ready. We didn't want to sit on funds that were already stretched. The existing program ends 6 months into the year generally because of a lack of resources, and so siphoning off 1/3 of that for county employees for a program that hadn't been set up yet was concerning. So rather than cutting the program, which we actually thought had some merit, although we were concerned about the timing, we added $1 million to the existing homeownership programs, which are already out the door, fortunately, and we allowed the department to move forward with this program, which I think our suspicions were correct. So I will just note that for future budgeting decisions, but we do appreciate that this has gone through and it gives you a month head start, so to speak, before the fiscal year. And I will note that we have additional $3 million in ARPA funding that is before the full council and has broad support as well, which would allow the homeownership programs for the public, not necessarily for county employees, to essentially be fully funded for the request that we expect. So just with that background, you want to just give a quick update and confirm that it's up and running as of today, which is what we were told?
Sure. Barry Gentry, our chief of the housing division, can provide the update.
Yes, the Montgomery County homeownership program that you just described, we are planning to have it up and running as of Monday. So we have, yes, the 8th. The 8th.
The 8th, okay.
Yes. So we have in place a website that will be handled by the state for applications. And if we give out 25,000 per person that's eligible for it, we could do as much as 125 individual families. So we're very hopeful. We have right now the police department, fire department, as well as teachers are in line in terms of folks that would be eligible to apply for this program. So we'll be up and running next Monday.
So police, fire, and teachers, but not county government employees?
It's focused on those groups that we have talked to specifically with their unions and gotten approval. And so it is county employees, but it's a focus on those particular groups that we have talked to and gotten their approvals. They've talked to their employees and their staff, and they are excited and awaiting this particular program. Okay, and then do we know how they will be prioritized? I mean, assuming there's more than 125 people among those that would like to get assistance? It's basically first come, first serve. We will, they have an application process that has been put in place, and if they meet the requirements, that's how they proceed. And are there any income restrictions? Obviously, we know what if it's a two-spouse household, we know what one spouse makes based on their public employment. Is there a income restriction? I don't have the details on the exact restrictions, but there are some restrictions for sure. Okay. So that we're making sure that we're getting to county employees who might not otherwise be able to afford to purchase a home in the county. And we're trying to make it accessible. So sure. Well, we appreciate that goal and have supported it like we did last year with a healthy level of skepticism of timing. And so, I appreciate that it's now moving forward. I think it would be helpful for us to have a follow-up conversation once the program is up and running to understand how it's working and perhaps to compare it to our broader program with the public, which is oversubscribed. One of the questions, and concerns that we had is just to make sure that we're advertising this, we're communicating it, we're working with our labor partners. Hopefully that has happened over the last 10 months, but it'll be important for us to have a follow-up on that. So I'm sure you're not ready to do that today, but why don't we schedule a time to come back and better understand that, and maybe that's a post-Labor Day check-in with the committee on this particular program, and actually I think on the additional ARPA dollars for the public programs as well, to get a sense of how we're doing with the additional funds that we have provided, because we're essentially doubling that program. So thank you.
Okay, top of page 7, item L. The other main expenditure component of the HIF is the affordable housing loans. As we've discussed over the past several months on the quarterly report for DHCA and how they fund their loans through the CIP, through the HIF, the executive is recommending an increase of $1.5 million for FY24 to a total level of $13.9 million for housing loans of various sorts, including rights of first refusal, as well as more traditional loans. There's a discussion we had, I think, about whether to keep that $13.9 million in the HIF or move out to the CIP. We can have that discussion, or we can defer it. But in terms of meeting committee's request to make the HIF more transparent, this would be one way to do that, is to move these funds out of the HIF and into the CIP at a later date, perhaps.
Yeah, I'll just note, I'm not sure we're ready to do it today. And I'm not sure we're going to be ready this budget cycle. I think there was an interest in doing that. I had and have continued to push urgency here because I do think we need to be a lot more transparent with the HIF. And but there are impacts that we have to work through and figure out, and an understanding of the department's flexibility to execute deals, and what money would be available at what time based on what decisions that we make. So I was the one who has been pushing this, so I hope colleagues will agree, and it seems that they will, because they want, I know didn't want to have any service impacts in the change, but we need to do this. I don't think we're going to do it for this budget, but it will not be acceptable if we come into the next budget and this isn't worked out, and I don't think it should be worked out at the council. I think it needs to be worked out in advance, and we'll continue to work on that. I appreciate Acting Director Bruton and the department's indulgence here, and Ms. Salem as well, who's been working with council staff to try to figure out how to do this in a way that doesn't have impacts. But I just want to note that we're going to talk a lot, and we're already getting requests from partners that have used the HIF for important projects and important programs, and it's just not clear, and has never been clear, of what money is available. We're hearing from nonprofit partners of what the impacts would be on the pipeline and on conversations that they're having, and what money is available for the various projects. And the answer is nobody really knows. Until the department decides to move forward and looks at different funding sources to put together a deal, it's not clear that this is the amount of money that is available for these type of deals. This is the amount of money that's available specifically for this type of purpose. That has been an ongoing challenge in the HIF, has been a catch-all for anything and everything. There have been some benefits to that in terms of flexibility, both to the predecessors of this committee, who haven't had to compete with the reconciliation list at times within the HIF, and also for the department to have flexibility to be able to be flexible and nimble and innovative at times. But it also understandably causes a lack of transparency and accountability to the public and to our partners who we need. And so I am absolutely committed to getting this sorted out, and by this time next year, I am putting the marker down that it must be. But I don't think we're going to be able to do that today.
Okay, sounds good. The last category of the HIF is the other claims on fund balance. These are funds that are not part of the appropriation. Essentially, DHA uses the fund balance in the HIF to do several things. The most important thing they do, or at least in terms of dollar amount, is they set aside funding for housing loans that have not been encumbered or closed upon, but are in various stages of discussion. So that number is $7.5 million as of March 15th. However, it's a point-in-time snapshot. As discussions occur, more funds may be encumbered. So that number is adjusting. But as of March 15, that number is what's been identified as being necessary for next year's housing loans that would presumably close at some point. And then one other item, it's a pilot program being proposed for FY24. That's $385,000 to enter into a partnership with Enterprise, a nonprofit entity, to essentially do a combination of training, marketing, technical assistance, as well as provide grants for pre-development costs to attract faith-based institutions and to look at ways of developing their properties for affordable housing. It's a little more than doing studies. There is a intent to produce actual affordable housing units over 2 years, about 750 units. It's discussed more in detail in the packet later on, but we can stop and discuss it now. It is a new program being funded through the HIF, and so just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, well, first of all, I've been talking about this issue for a while. This committee has been talking about this issue for a while. We have really advanced the cause of public land and ensuring that we advance affordable housing on our public lands, but have also frequently discussed mission-oriented, mission-based organizations that don't have a lot of resources in money and dollars, but have a lot of resources in land oftentimes. Surface parking lots in many cases are just large, land mass that they have acquired maybe decades and decades ago, long paid off, but could be an opportunity to, as we like to say, live our values and live their values out loud, and to turn it into action. But they need the county to help them to do that, because they don't lack, or they lack the technical expertise and oftentimes the financial resources and capacity to be able to bring some of those projects to fruition. So I'm very bullish on this project. I really appreciate it. I do think we need to come back and better understand how it's going to be moved forward, how we're going to get those 750 units and when. But I see this as a high priority to advance our housing goals directly in line with what I have been asking for and what this committee has been asking for in order to maximize public land and to work with our nonprofit partners and faith-based partners to advance their interest in this arena as well. And so just wanted to acknowledge that. And I do think we need to come back in the fall once this is up and running and get a better understanding of the plan and how we hold ourselves accountable to these units and how we advance this effort moving forward. With that, any comments from colleagues?
No, I just agree and appreciate the work you're doing. I think you've heard consistently from us, like, we want to work with you on getting these things done and make sure we're just doing it in a way that makes sense, that you're not, I appreciate the chair's deferring the other item, but and look forward to working with you on that, but in general, nothing else to add.
Great. Okay, so we are going to add, well, this is in the HIP, so we don't need to include it in the reconciliation list. Okay, perfect. Sorry. I knew that and, confused myself. Okay, so an example of maybe not the most transparent, but helpful because it's a key priority in having everything that we're talking about here within the HIP, but we will move that forward.
Okay, Section E, again, we've discussed most of the changes. The only one left is excuse me, this a $300,000 increase for the Design for Life program in FY24. This is on top of the $1.5 million ARPA funds that's going to forth to council in the next week or two. Tomorrow. Okay, perfect.
The next 24 hours
Correct.
or so.
Right. So altogether,
if we spend enough time talking about the items at this work session, we might just roll right into council session.
Yep, there we go.
So we'll talk about it tomorrow, as I mentioned, with the $3 million to create pathways for homeownership to help our residents create generational wealth. This is to help those residents who are at risk of losing their homes that lack the ability to retrofit them to be more accessible, to meet their needs, whether with a disability or aging or a combination of the two. And it's a really important program that's relied upon by a number of residents, and we'll be working together with nonprofit partners as we have in the past, and this will exponentially increase our ability to do that. And I do also want to acknowledge here, DHCA, our office worked with DHCA to get a recommendation about how to do this and what the benefits would be as we were looking at the best ways to leverage those ARPA set-aside dollars for housing affordability, and this was an identified area where we worked collaboratively with colleagues to move it forward. So I think it's important to note that as well.
Okay. The only other item of note, the rest we've discussed previously, the Housing Production Fund, there's an increased contribution expected from the HPF in FY24, increasing $2.1 million for a total gross revenue of $4.9 million in interest payments from HPF loans. The projected debt service is gone down a little bit by $1.3 million to a total projected debt service of $5.7. Therefore, the net cost to the county in FY24 from the Housing Production Fund, a full $100 million fund, is about a little less than $800,000 is expected. So just an update on that.
Yeah, I just want to note how amazing that is, just to think about that, a net cost to the county of $800,000 for a fund that is $100 million here, and the foresight that this committee had and the prior council to move and advance that project. It was a lot of work, I can tell you. I have hundreds and hundreds of hours of effort into that, and Ken Silverman and Cindy Gibson are nodding in the back because they were involved in each and every one of those conversations. And I saw Linda McMillan over the weekend, who I will note was at the center of each and every one of those conversation as well. And we have great respect for our current council staff and appreciation, but always miss Linda and her breadth of experience, which I don't think is matched by anybody in county government related to these issues. But it really is remarkable to see that fund. And we'll note once we get through this, our next phase of this, which I want to update colleagues on as well. The second piece of that was always to create a nonprofit fund. And we are moving the ball forward on that. I want to update colleagues. We're going to have to come back to discuss some of that before the council, and it requires CIP amendments and some other changes. But I think we are zeroing in on a path forward, working with HOC and DHCA together to have both a funding mechanism and a plan for how to finally move forward that years-long effort and to ensure that we can protect a huge proportion of the at-risk naturally occurring affordable housing in the county. Are we ready to talk about it now?
At your
All right,
yes.
so I'll talk about it now. So colleagues know we've been working on the nonprofit preservation fund. The Housing Opportunities Commission and DHCA have been working together with us. We've been coordinating very closely with some of our nonprofit partners because they're ultimately the ones that we want to be supporting in this effort to help them to execute projects in their pipeline. The goal, as it has always been, is to create ultimately a $50 million revolving loan fund. In many ways, it'll be modeled after the HPF has been. Right now, given the interest rate environment, the $800,000 for a $100 million fund is not available to us, unfortunately. And so the plan and thought process right now is to initiate this program with a substantial down payment to get it going with cash, and then to come back next year and perhaps the year after and look at completing the full $50 million fund, either cash over the course of a couple additional years, realistically, or if the interest rate environment allows us to potentially bond fund the remainder and the balanced next year of the fund. And by lowering that number significantly, even from 50 million, it would make the bonding less and allow us to move the ball forward, and also allow us to both create a proof of concept, which we think has already been proven with the HPF, but can be demonstrated to work with nonprofits, which appropriately will have slightly different standards based on their ability to repay and based on the complicated nature of nonprofit housing deals that DHCA is all too familiar with and participates in, and so that's our ultimately our goal and our effort. The county, as it's been noted, is at risk of losing 7,000 to 11,000 unrestricted units, and this could help us to step in and make the most direct impact on preventing the loss of naturally occurring affordable housing of any local jurisdiction anywhere in the region or really in the country. And so there really is substantial interest in moving that forward. The discussion now is essentially both to set this up and also to change the way that the ROFR process works to free up additional funding within DHCA. I have long been concerned about the approach that we have taken, which requires tens of millions of dollars to be set aside for what is essentially a very short-term need for the county to move over the ownership from a ROFR, right of first refusal deal, to the ultimate receiver, generally a nonprofit, although HOC participates in these deals as well. We're working with HOC now, and there's an opportunity for HOC to step in and help to move a very substantial deal in the pipeline that is potentially going to close imminently, likely in June. And by doing that would allow for the department to be paid back a significant amount of resources to allow us to both direct some of those repayment proceeds to set up this fund, and then the balance to go back into the HIF with the remainder of those funds to come back several months later. So some of those funds will come back within days and allow us to get this fund set up potentially as early as June. We can move the ball forward on this. and then ultimately could get it approved as a CIP amendment by early July before we go into recess. And so I just wanted to note that for colleagues. I think it's really exciting. I want to acknowledge publicly both HOC and DHCA and our nonprofit partners. Can turn it over to you, Acting Director Bruton, if you had some high-level comments on it. But I just wanted to appreciate all of your interest in both fixing the problem, which has predated you and actually this county executive, frankly, will allow us to both free up tens of millions of more dollars for traditional HIF loans for all of our nonprofit partners and allow us to get this fund up and running within existing resources by just utilizing them better and making some changes to the process, which you may require some council action as well.
Sure, thank you very much. I think you did an excellent job of kind of summarizing the things at play. The three different parts of kind of this all need to kind of fit together, and all the parts fall into place, and that being the creation of this new fund, HOC's assistance with a current ROFR that we're in the process of exercising and closing on, and then the amendments to the ROFR law to allow us not to have tens of millions of dollars on hand, just as you explained. And I want to thank you, all of you. I've tried to meet with each of the council members on this committee individually, and HOC and DHCA, we've been meeting multiple times a week to try to work out the details of all of this and to make sure that it's amenable to all the members of the committee, to try to make sure that everything falls into place with all these moving parts by June or July, to make sure that we're able to move forward in a much more constructive manner going forward. And I think it's really wonderful that we've all been collaborating so well together.
Appreciate that. Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez.
Very quickly, I just wanted to highlight how wonderful it has been to see the HCA and HOC working together on this goal. But I also, and he's not paying attention, I also want to recognize the work of Chair Fritzen on this. Honestly, it has been you leading the way on this, and I don't think you're getting enough credit. And although this is not done, I appreciate you, and I'm glad I'm here on the County Council in this committee at this point. And I know this is also part of the tenant protection effort that we all are doing as a council, and you deserve a lot of credit for this. So that's what I wanted to say.
Well, thank you for that. Appreciate it. It's ongoing work of a lot of people. I'm happy to be carrying the ball forward right now on behalf of the committee. Ultimately, it's a committee-based effort and has been ongoing for several years, and really appreciate Councilmember Giwando for all of his partnership and work getting to this point, because we effectively took the first step in two phases, the two $50 million tranches. We always talked about coming back and doing this part, and now it's been very complicated and challenging because it is a very different animal to work through. But ultimately, I feel like we're on the precipice of getting to a really positive point. And I do think it has both exposed and provided us an opportunity to fix some of the underlying challenges. This has helped the department to do a deep dive into its processes to determine whether the current practice makes sense. And I want to acknowledge and appreciate that there is a recognition that it doesn't make sense, and an interest in figuring out what are the ways in which we can change the process so that it does make sense. And in so doing allows us to move this project forward and also to free up a lot of additional resources to do the type of deals that we want. A ROFR deal is an important first step, but that's all it is. And so if we are soaking up tens of millions of dollars just for the first step of a deal that ultimately needs a series of permanent financing opportunities and needs the county to step up on that, we really need to make sure that we are leveraging these resources in the most thoughtful and effective way possible. I don't think we have been doing that up to this point, but we are moving in that direction, and I think that is important. So up to colleagues. I think there's two different options that we could take here. One, and it's not a formal action, but one would be to indicate an interest in moving forward with a CIP amendment to create this fund, which ultimately would allow us to come back quicker and get this done a bit sooner. It wouldn't be a formal action, but it would just be, an indication for council staff to work a little bit more earnestly with executive staff, particularly when the reallocation comes back in. Because essentially, just to remind colleagues, the naturally occurring affordable housing fund returned money previously, and we reallocate it back to that fund. What this would allow us to do is to take some of the proceeds that come back and reallocate it both to put the down payment to set up this fund as a CIP amendment, and also to put in additional resources into the broader HIF so that it would be flexible to work on a number of different deals, including naturally occurring affordable housing, but would provide the department with what I think is adequate flexibility for the balance of the funds that come back in. And the goal would be $20 million if available to come in to start this fund, which would be enough to get it going for the first year and allow us to come back next year. It would be again out of loan repayments that would be coming back within days of when they go out. So if comfortable, I think that would be a helpful signal to send to council staff, but want to yield to colleagues on that.
Let's put the white smoke up. I think that, I'm happy to send the signal. Obviously, always reserve the right to kick the tires and figure the details out with DHCA, but the concept is consistent with what we've done. I do think, I happy to have played a supporting role in the work that we did on the previous committee to really maximize this revolving fund, and so I'm all in on signaling that, and just as always, just want to go through details, work with you, hear concerns, make things better. But we have to move in this direction. The housing crisis demands it, and it's part of my 3 Ps: produce, preserve, and protect, baby. So let's do it.
Appreciate that, Councilmember Gonzalez.
In agreement. Let's move on.
All right, so we're going to signal that to council staff. We're going to continue moving this ball forward. I really want to thank the work of colleagues. Councilmember Jawando played a significant role in moving this forward on the previous council and committee, which I really do think worked together to advance this. I think this previous iteration of this committee, I think, did more on housing the prior council than any other 4-year period in county history. And it has been my goal on this committee for us to just continue that and really double down on the successful efforts that we've undertaken. I think this is a perfect example of that, and having Councilmember Fani Gonzalez with her work at planning and really advancing the ball forward, which allowed the council to move forward with several of these initiatives, really puts us in a position to do it. Want to acknowledge her leadership and her work as well. So we have a very strong effort here. There's some details that we will work out, and everybody reserves the right to ask the right questions and to move things forward in the way that is best serving of our residents. But we want to move forward with setting up this fund. We want to start it with $20 million with the goal of ultimately getting it to $50 million over the course of a few years from now, or less, we hope. And really want to acknowledge again, it would not be possible for us to move this forward without a coordination and collaboration between DHCA and HOC, which has not always been the case. And I think we need to acknowledge that as well. We need to have a strong partnership between our housing department and our public housing agency and the county council that appropriates the funds and oversees housing and land use in the county. And I feel like we are in a position now, perhaps better than we have been at any moment since I have been on this council and in county leadership roles to do that. And so I just want to thank everybody for their work and efforts there. So, all right, we have a recommendation there. And any other issues that you would like us to go through?
On the HIF, we're done. I think we have one more CIP item that Mrs. Jung will cover.
Yep. Hopefully this will be a quick one.
All right, I'll get this done in the 2 minutes that we have left. This is a FY23 to 28 CIP amendment for the countywide facade easement program. This is reflecting an additional $500,000 in state aid specifically for the White Oak neighborhood revitalization and facade improvement, and the larger project is just for revitalizing commercial areas throughout the county with a focus on older commercial properties. But that was pretty much it. Extra $500,000 in FY24.
All right, without objection, we will do what this committee has said is one of our favorite things to do, which is to spend state dollars on county priorities, federal and state dollars on county priorities. We love to do it, and without objection, we will move forward with that change.
Thank you.
With that, with 1 minute to spare, thank you everybody for joining today, and we are adjourned.